Chapter 765. At the mention of the Yu Nu Palace, Lu Jianghe's tone was filled with disdain. 500 years ago, not to mention the entire Kunlun devil cult, even his blood demon hall could look down on the majority of sects in the pugilistic world. He naturally did not care about the Yu Nu Palace. Clearly, the Yu Nu Palace's strength was not very strong 500 years ago. Moreover, according to Lu Jianghe's description, Chu Xiu more or less understood what was going on with the Yu Nu Palace's heavenly sword. The nine-tailed demon fox was also known as the heavenly fox in ancient times. It was an extremely powerful fierce beast. Of course, this was only powerful for others. For the Kunlun devil cult, this thing was only an ornamental pet. In the past, the Red Lotus demon venerable was able to forcibly kill and seal it. For the Kunlun devil cult, this thing did not have much significance other than being an ornamental pet. After all, it was an ancient fierce beast. In this era, fierce beasts were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Later on, when the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, many sects also divided up many of the Kunlun devil cult's treasures. The Yu Nu Palace obtained the sword that sealed the nine-tailed heavenly fox. According to Lu Jianghe, for the nine-tailed heavenly fox's remnant soul to be useful, it must be fed something at regular intervals. Just like the blood soul pearl that sealed Lu Jianghe. However, Lu Jianghe's blood soul pearl was not picky. Any qi and blood would do. Of course, the stronger the qi and blood, the better the effect. As for the nine-tailed heavenly fox, what it devoured was very rare. It was the martial artist's essence, qi, and spirit. The younger the martial artist with the greatest potential, the more vigorous their essence, qi, and spirit. Moreover, the nine-tailed heavenly fox only devoured the essence, qi, and spirit of young martial artists. It did not care for older martial artists. Therefore, the disciples chosen to participate in the heavenly sword baptism had to be below 40 years old. A martial artist's essence was only enough for the nine-tailed heavenly fox to last for 100 years. The first 30 years were the most powerful and could make it help the Yu Nu Palace. In the later stages, its strength would gradually weaken. After 100 years, if it still did not devour the essence, energy, and spirit of young martial artists, it would end up like Lu Jianghe, falling into a deep slumber. In the past, when the nine-tailed celestial fox was in the Kunlun devil cult, there would often be some young disciples of the righteous sects who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. They would vainly try to eliminate demons and defend the righteous path, but the result was naturally very miserable. At that time, these fellows would be the nine-tailed celestial fox's snacks. She wouldn't even need to feed them once every 100 years. Sometimes, it would even be possible to feed them several times a year. What are the consequences of having your essence, qi, and spirit devoured? Chu Xiu asked with a frown. Lu Jianghe chuckled and said, I won't die, but I won't have a good ending either. In the lightest case, I'll have my cultivation crippled temporarily. Even if I manage to cultivate it back, I'll lose all my potential and won't be able to make any progress for the rest of my life. In more serious cases, they might even lose a portion of their lifespan and age prematurely. If you don't believe me, you can ask that little girl. All the disciples of the Yu Nu Palace who had participated in the heavenly sword baptism had secretly comprehended some sword intent. In reality, how many of them could appear in front of the people of the Jianghu again? Even heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. Your friend is going to be out of luck this time. Those women of the Yu Nu Palace pretend to be pure all day long. In the past, they had even offered themselves to our holy sect's bed. Otherwise, that heavenly sword that sealed the nine-tailed celestial fox was merely a plaything of our holy sect. How could they know how to use it? Who knows, it might have been leaked out by some lustful fellow. After hearing Lu Jianghe's words, Chu Xiu's expression turned slightly gloomy. In the past, he had already guessed that Yan Fian had other motives for getting close to Lu Fengxian. He didn't expect this woman to be so scheming. Luo Feiheng saw that Chu Xiu didn't say anything for a long time. She was just about to ask something when Chu Xiu said, Did the Yu Nu Palace invite you? Luo Feiheng shook her head and said, I'm not the Luo family's young miss right now. Why would they invite me? Every time the Yu Nu Palace holds the sword welcoming assembly, it's actually a show of force to tell other forces that our Yu Nu Palace has strength again. Be careful. So every time the Yu Nu Palace invites the big sects of the pugilistic world, the famous figures of the pugilistic world to attend the ceremony. Why would they invite a small character like me? Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "All right then, let's go to the Yu Nu Palace together." Luo Feiheng had a strange look on her face. "They didn't invite you. What are you going for?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Who said that I can't go without an invitation? Doesn't the Yu Nu Palace want a big scene? Don't they want to invite the famous figures of the pugilistic world to give them face? I wonder if my Chu Xiu's face is big enough." Luo Feiheng could tell that something was wrong with Chu Xiu's tone. But she didn't say much. She was also the kind of person who loved to join in on the fun. Now that there was fun to freeload, she couldn't ask for more. Although the Yu Nu Palace's strength had always been mediocre, they were still a big sect that had been passed down for thousands of years. They still had a foundation. So when the Yu Nu Palace held the sword welcoming assembly, more than half of the sects that posted the invitation came. Of course they came. But the Yu Nu Palace's face wasn't big enough for those big sects to send their patriarchs and sect masters. So most of the sects and aristocratic families only sent a random person to support the Yu Nu Palace. The Yu Nu Palace wasn't too far from the Wu County's Luo family. It was just between the Wu County and Jiangdong County, adjacent to the longest river in eastern Qi, Du River. By the time Chu Xiu and Luo Feiheng arrived at the entrance of the Yu Nu Palace, it was already quite lively. Many female disciples of the Yu Nu Palace were dressed in plain white clothes, receiving the guests politely and reservedly. It had to be said that the Yu Nu Palace wasn't easy. The pugilistic world had always been dominated by men. If a woman wanted to stand out in the pugilistic world, the difficulty she had to pay was much greater than that of a man. So with so many sects in the pugilistic world, very few of them were all female disciples. The Yu Nu Palace was one of them. It wasn't easy for them to develop to the level of one of the 5 major sword sections. Of course, this was useless to Chu Xiu. Even if it wasn't easy for you, what does it have to do with me? The Yu Nu Palace had to be prepared to pay the price for scheming against his, Chu Xiu's, good friend. Step by step, they walked up the stairs of the Yu Nu Palace. It had to be said that the sects controlled by women had different aesthetic standards. Chu Xiu could be considered a knowledgeable person. He had seen many of the buildings of the major sections. Actually, most of them were big, black, and crude. They pursued grandeur and practicality. Moon-worshipping sect, on the other hand, had a picturesque appearance. That was because of its good geographical location. The Yu Nu Palace was really willing to spend a lot of money. They actually used snow mountain rocks from the extreme north to build the entire palace. This thing didn't have much use. It wasn't sturdy and couldn't be used as a medium for formations. The only good thing was that it was snow white and looked very good. The snow white and dazzling palace coupled with the Yu Nu Palace disciples dressed in white robes and wielding swords made it look like a paradise in the human world. However, when the Yu Nu Palace disciples in charge of welcoming the guests saw Chu Xiu and Luo Feiheng walk up, their expressions couldn't help but change. Perhaps some of them recognized this Luo clan's young miss, and some didn't. However, the righteous and demonic wars had just ended. Who wouldn't recognize him, Chu Xiu? At this moment, Chu Xiu's black robe was fluttering in the wind. At his waist was the heavenly demon dance with a sinister aura. His entire person was emitting a gloomy and evil aura. It was in conflict with the Yu Nu Palace's snow white and clean aura. Moreover, Chu Xiu didn't have the slightest expression on his face. He even had the posture of suddenly drawing his sword and chopping people. Who would dare to let Chu Xiu in at this time? Moreover, although the Yu Nu Palace didn't participate in the righteous and demonic wars, the Yu Nu Palace was a genuine righteous sect. The Yu Nu Palace didn't participate this time because of their strength. It couldn't be said that they changed their stance. Chu Xiu was a genuine demonic overlord. He was the face of the Yinma lineage. What was the meaning of letting him in? However, before they could speak, Chu Xiu directly said, "Northern Yanzhen Wu Hall Governor Chu Xiu has come to pay a visit to the Yu Nu Palace's Palace Master Lin. I congratulate the Yu Nu Palace for holding the sword welcoming assembly." Hearing that Chu Xiu put his identity as the Northern Yanzhen Wu Hall Governor, the Yu Nu Palace disciples didn't know what to say. Was the imperial court considered demonic? Sometimes, food could be eaten indiscriminately, but words couldn't be said indiscriminately. The Yu Nu Palace disciple in charge of welcoming the guests could only say awkwardly, "Official Chu, please forgive us. This time, our Yu Nu Palace didn't invite you to participate in the sword welcoming assembly." At this moment, the martial artists who were heading to the Yu Palace to participate in the sword-welcoming assembly also noticed this scene. They immediately gathered around and whispered. They weren't in a hurry to enter the Yu Palace. Who didn't know of Chu Xiu's current reputation? He had a feeling that he came to the Yu Palace with ill intentions. However, the righteous and demonic Dao war had just ended. Whether it was the righteous or demonic Dao, they were in a temporary truce to recuperate. Looking at Chu Xiu's intentions, did he still want to cause trouble for the Yu Palace at this time? However, they didn't hear that Chu Xiu had any grudges with the Yu Palace. Chu Xiu said matter-of-factly, "I know you didn't invite me. It doesn't matter, I don't mind. I'm a magnanimous person and won't bother with women." Chu Xiu rummaged through his spatial secret box and didn't seem to find anything suitable as a congratulatory gift. Therefore, he took out 2 bottles of blood recovery pills and threw them to the Yu Palace disciple. He waved his hand generously and said, "This is the specialty of my Northern Yen Zhanwu Hall. Take it, no need to be polite. Other people don't bring congratulatory gifts. I'm a particular person. When I come to other sects as a guest, I have to bring something, right?" The Yu Palace disciple held the 2 bottles of blood recovery pills with a dumbfounded expression. She really didn't know what to do at this time. Although women weren't the mainstream in the pugilistic world, they had some privileges. Therefore, no one would make things difficult for the Yu Palace disciples. No one could bear to make things difficult for these delicate female disciples. This was the first time she encountered such a thing. At this time, Chu Xiu's expression suddenly turned gloomy. "What? I've already reported my name and given the congratulatory gift. You still won't let me in? Your Yu Palace is looking down on me, Chu Xiu?" Chapter 766. Aura was something that some people were born with. For example, the descendants of the royal family were born with an aura that was higher than ordinary people. However, most people's aura was cultivated later in life, just like Chu Xiu. After so many years of fighting, how many people had died directly or indirectly in Chu Xiu's hands? Perhaps even Chu Xiu himself couldn't count them. Especially during this period of time, when Chu Xiu fought with people in the Jianghu. His opponents were all experts from top sections. Among them, there were even experts in the true fire spirit refining realm like Feng Jinwu. These people all died in the hands of Chu Xiu. At this moment, how could the aura that Chu Xiu had cultivated be ordinary? When Chu Xiu's expression turned gloomy, the air around him seemed to have stagnated and became extremely heavy. Even the sky above Chu Xiu's head was covered with dark clouds, and indistinct roars of thunder could be heard. Raging wind and thunder. Chu Xiu had also reached such a supreme realm. The female disciple in charge of greeting guests was so scared by Chu Xiu's state that she didn't dare to say a word. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. "Official Chu is so powerful. Unfortunately, this power can only be used on women. As a man, what's the point of bullying a woman?" Everyone present revealed a trace of surprise in their eyes. Someone actually dared to ridicule Chu Xiu. Who was so bold? However, when they saw the person who came, they were relieved. The Sun clan of River East was indeed bold. The person who ridiculed Chu Xiu was Sun Changming, the disciple of the Sun clan of River East who had designs on Luo Fei Hung and was scolded away by Chu Xiu. The Sun clan of River East was very close to the Yu Palace. Both sides were only separated by a river, so on this occasion, the Sun clan of River East would definitely send someone. Moreover, the people who came this time were not only Sun Zhongming, but also Sun Qili, who had appeared in front of Chu Xiu last time, and another martial artist who was slightly older but had a more powerful and calm aura. Chu Xiu suddenly turned his gaze to Sun Zhongming and said with a murderous tone, "If you don't have the ability to bully women, then how about I bully you?" To tell the truth, Chu Xiu was already very polite to the Yu Palace. Of course, bullying women wasn't considered a skill, but the problem was that the Yu Palace was scheming against his good friend, Lu Fengxian. Since someone wanted to court death, then don't blame me, Chu Xiu, for bullying them. This was the Yu Palace. If it was any other sect, Chu Xiu might have already swung his saber at them. At this time, Lu Jianghe's voice rang in Chu Xiu's ears. "Eh? A disciple of the Sun clan of River East? A descendant of that old tortoise of the Sun clan? That old tortoise is famous for his endurance. Even if this deity slapped his grandson to death in front of him, he could still smile and say that it was a good kill. Even if this deity defecated on his head, he could say that the defecation was fragrant. Kid, don't be afraid of the Sun Clan. That old tortoise is probably long dead. The one in charge now should be a little tortoise. If they dare to cause trouble for you, then let this deity out. This deity can definitely protect you from death. Chu Xiu ignored Lu Jianghe. At this time the slightly older martial artist of the Sun Clan stood up and said with a frown, Official Chu, although your seniority isn't high, in terms of status, it's not low either. Are you not afraid of losing face by arguing with a junior like this? Since you know it's a junior, then act like one. Don't interrupt where you shouldn't interrupt. A junior doesn't know the rules, but as an elder, don't you know the rules? As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu suddenly took a step forward, and the violent aura around him instantly erupted. It was incomparably ferocious, and the originally peaceful Yu Palace was covered in a layer of haze. The martial Dao Grandmaster of the Sun Clan showed a hint of anger on his face, but at this time, Sun Qili glared at Sun Changming fiercely. He pulled the martial artist's arm and transmitted his voice. Second brother, be careful. This Chu Xiu's strength is extraordinary. It's just the two of us today. I'm afraid we won't be able to gain an advantage if we clash with him. This martial artist was the second son of the Sun Clan, Sun Xiaofan. He was not weak in the Sun Clan, but he rarely appeared in the Jianghu, so he was not well known. But even if he was not weak, he did not dare to say that he could definitely defeat Chu Xiu. Of course, the most important thing was to lose in this kind of situation. With so many people watching, if the Sun Clan of Jiangdong showed weakness in front of Chu Xiu, where would their face be? At this moment, a clear female voice came from above. Both of you calm down. Give the Yu Palace some face. The palace master of the Yu Palace, Lin Fengya, walked out of the palace, followed by Lu Fengxian and Yan Fian. Chu Xiu also saw Feng Qishao looking out of the door sneakily. When he saw Chu Xiu, he even waved at him. Ever since the battle on Mount Fuyu, Lin Fengya rarely appeared in front of the people of the Jianghu. However, even though her injuries had been treated by miracle Dr. Feng Buping, she still did not recover. At least, Chu Xiu could feel that her aura was still a little weak. The two people from the Sun Clan snorted coldly. With a way out, they easily took it and directly led their people into the Yu Palace. Lin Fengya walked in front of the female disciple who was welcoming the guests and slapped her. She said with a gloomy expression, "What are you doing?" Although the sword welcoming conference did not invite official Chu due to the long journey, now that official Chu has come personally, you still want to stop him. What use are you if you don't know your place? The female disciple covered her face, looking like a pear blossom in tears. It made people's hearts ache to see her like this. If it were someone else, seeing this, they would definitely say to let the matter go and generously let it go. However, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "So insensible, it's quite useless. Just kill her." Lin Fengya's expression immediately froze. The surrounding people also looked at Chu Xiu with a dumbfounded expression. This guy did not play by the rules. Of course, Lin Fengya would not kill her own disciple for such a small matter. She could only force a smile and said, "Official Chu must be joking. Please come in." Lu Jianghe laughed coldly in Chu Xiu's mind. Those bitches from the Yu Palace are just so unreasonable. This venerable looked down on them back then. This generation's palace lord is still somewhat good-looking. Of course, she is far from your demon sex little girl. However, some people like this kind of dignified, holy, and inviolable appearance. Even within the holy church, there are many people who like this. Otherwise, why do you think the Yu Palace hasn't been killed when they clamored about getting rid of demons every day? Isn't it because there are people who care for the fairer sex? As Chu Xiu followed Lin Fengya into the Yu Palace, he said to Lu Jianghe in his mind, "Why do I feel like you have a lot of resentment towards the Yu Palace? Could it be that you also had some thoughts about the palace lord back then, but she rejected you in the end?" Lu Jianghe said disdainfully, "If this venerable likes that woman, then it is her honor. To be liked by this venerable is something that countless women in the pugilistic world yearned for. Just their Yu Palace is qualified to reject this venerable?" Chu Xiu ignored Lu Jianghe's bragging. After entering the Yu Palace, Lu Fengxian called out to Yan Fian and went to personally receive Chu Xiu. Yan Fian frowned slightly. To be honest, she did not expect Chu Xiu to come. She was the one who did not let Lu Fengxian tell Chu Xiao. Yan Fian was always a bit afraid of Chu Xiao. Therefore, before the start of the sword welcoming assembly, Lu Fengxian wanted Chu Xiao to get up, but she stopped him. The reason was that this was a special period. Chu Xiao had just finished fighting the righteous and demonic factions. He might still be in seclusion, so it was not convenient for him to come to Eastern Qi. Lu Fengxian agreed. He did not want to trouble Chu Xiao, so he did not inform him. Xie Xiaolu was the same. Yan Fian used the excuse that the journey was too far and did not inform him. As for the Shangshui Ying clan, because they did not have any relationship with the Yunnu Palace, they did not inform them under Yan Fian's suggestion. Among all of Lu Fengxian's friends, only Feng Qishao was invited. Feng Qishao could come because of Sword King City. As one of the 5 major sword sects, it was impossible for the Yunnu Palace not to inform Sword King City. At this time, Sword King City had just suffered a crushing defeat in the righteous and demonic factions. The 3 true fire soul refinement cultivators were all taught a lesson by Yi Xiaonan. They lost miserably and were in a bad mood. Therefore, in order to avoid getting into trouble, Feng Qishao volunteered to come to Yunnu Palace to participate in the sword welcoming assembly. Previously, Heavenly King Shen could still tolerate Feng Qishao's stupid mouth. But at this time, Heavenly King Shen and the others were still angry. They were annoyed by Feng Qishao's nonsense, so they sent him away. Lin Fengya walked to Yan Fian's side and whispered, "Fian, what's wrong?" Yan Fian shook his head. "It's nothing. It's just that I didn't expect Chu Xiao to come." Looking at him, he doesn't seem to have good intentions. Lin Fengya snorted coldly and said, "It's true that he doesn't have good intentions, but when the Yunnu Palace can borrow the power of the heavenly sword soul, even if Wei Shuya comes, the Yunnu Palace will not be afraid." But as soon as she said that, Lin Fengya sighed and touched Yan Fian's head. "Fian, I know it's difficult for you this time. In fact, if the Yunnu Palace had other candidates, I would not agree to you doing such a thing. It's a pity that I'm old. Even if I want to participate in the baptism of the heavenly sword soul, the sword soul probably won't recognize me. If I anger the sword soul and cause no sword soul to protect me for 100 years, the Yunnu Palace will really be in danger." Yan Fian shook his head and said, "Master, don't say that. The Yunnu Palace has raised me for my entire life. Naturally, I can't watch the sect decline. It's just that by doing this, I'm letting down Lu Fengxian. With his strength, if nothing goes wrong, he will definitely be able to become a martial Dao Grandmaster in the future." Lin Fengya snorted lightly and said, "There's no such thing as letting down or letting down. You gave yourself to him. If he doesn't make some sacrifices for you, can he still be called a man? Why does the Yunnu Palace forbid disciples from marrying? It's because the ancestors of the Yunnu Palace have seen through the nature of these men. What love? It's nothing more than a transaction. But don't worry, Fian. After this, the Yunnu Palace will definitely protect Lu Fengxian for a lifetime. We won't let him suffer in the pugilistic world." Chapter 767. While Lin Fengya was whispering to Yan Fian, Lu Fengxian was also entertaining Chu Xiao. "Brother Chu, I thought you were in seclusion, so I didn't invite you. I didn't expect you to actually come. And Miss Luo, did you two come together?" Chu Xiao shook his head and said, "We just happened to bump into each other." "Brother Lu, did Yan Fian ask you to participate in this sword welcoming conference?" Lu Fengxian shook his head and said, "No, the person who originally participated in the sword welcoming conference was Fian, but she was worried that she couldn't meet the requirements of the heavenly sword spirit, so she spent all her days cultivating like crazy. However, cultivation is not something that can be achieved overnight. Seeing her like this, I couldn't bear to see her like this, so I asked her to ask Palace Master Lin if he could let an outsider represent the sword welcoming assembly. It just so happened that Palace Master Lin agreed, so I became the candidate." Chu Xiao secretly shook his head. This guy must have been tricked by Yan Fian and Lin Fengya. But this was Lu Fengxian's personality. If someone he didn't know played tricks in front of him, he wouldn't foolishly fall for it. But the problem was that as long as Lu Fengxian thought of you as one of them, he would believe whatever you said. In Lu Fengxian's own words, "If I don't even believe your words, doesn't that mean I don't treat you as one of us?" Just as Chu Xiao was about to say something to Lu Fengxian, Yan Fian called out to Lu Fengxian, Lu Fengxian said, Brother Chu, there are a lot of things to do before the sword welcoming conference starts, so I won't accompany you for long. After the sword welcoming conference ends, I'll treat you to a drink. After saying that, Lu Fengxian found Shui Wuxiang and the other three and said to them, You guys help entertain Brother Chu. Seeing Lu Fengxian leave in a hurry, Chu Xiu's brows furrowed tightly. This is the Lu Fengxian you were talking about? TSK. TSK. Lu Jiang he clicked his tongue and sighed. I thought the one who was deceived was a fool, but it turns out to be a young man with a pure heart. The Jianghu is a chaotic world where everyone tries to deceive and deceive each other. Such a young man is rarely seen at any time. He was born with luck. It's not easy. Chu Xiu asked curiously. You're a hallmaster of the Blood Demon Hall. Why do you look like you're a fortune teller? You can see through everyone? Lu Jiang he smiled somewhat complacently and said, Fortune telling is to look at the future, while when I look at people, I look at their intrinsic qualities. Blood, qi, and bone could already represent a person's character and fate. The blood demon divine power had studied the power of qi and blood down to the bone. Even if he could not see something deeper, how could he not see something on the surface? If you can cultivate my blood god demonic art to the extreme, you will be able to achieve this as well. Moreover, there was a person like your friend in the past in the holy sect. He was the heartless demon venerable of the 4 great demon venerables. When he was young, he was a famous young chivalrous man in the Jianghu. Whether it was the aristocratic families or the rogue cultivators of the Jianghu, everyone would give him a thumbs up. Even when he was second on the Longhu leaderboard, the first on the Longhu leaderboard took the initiative to give up his position to the wind-sweeping tower. He asked them to revise the leaderboard, saying that he was not worthy of being above the heartless demon venerable. In the end, true love cannot fill the heartless cave. In the end, the heartless demon venerable was hurt by love and became a demon. In the end, he almost died. Fortunately, he was saved by the sect master. This kind of person is the most terrifying after becoming a demon. Among the 4 great demon lords, that one is the one who has killed the most people. In his eyes, there is no one he can't kill other than the sect leader, including himself. At this point, even Lu Jianghe's voice trembled slightly. It was obvious that the heartless demon venerable had left a very bad impression on him. However, Lu Jianghe then sneered and said, But in my opinion, whether it is the heartless demon venerable or your friend Lu Fengxian, they are simply too bored to indulge in such love. A man born in this world should naturally be unbridled. When you see a beautiful woman, you just snatch her, pull up your pants and leave. In the end, you and I are even. Very straightforward. What is there to talk about love? The corner of Chu Xiu's mouth twitched. To be honest, if the Kunlun devil cult in the past was filled with people like Lu Jianghe, it would be hard for it not to be destroyed. At this time, Feng Qishao also came over. When he saw Chu Xiu, he immediately began to complain, Brother Chu, I heard that you were very awe-inspiring on the battlefield of the righteous and demon sects. I also wanted to participate in that battle, but those old men didn't let me go. In the end, they came back after losing and scolded me that I am not as good as Zhong Xian. They said that Zhong Xian has become a martial Dao grandmaster while I am still in the same place. Tell me, is there any reason for this? If I can participate in the battle, maybe I can also become a martial Dao grandmaster. Feng Qishao's mouth did not stop there. At this time, Lu Jianghe said in surprise, Huh? You have a lot of young elites around you. This guy is from Sword King City? TSK. Natural sword physique. Such a person has sword qi flowing in his bones. With a sword in hand, his cultivation will improve by leaps and bounds. Sword King City has probably picked up a treasure. It's just that his mouth is a bit talkative. This venerate has never seen such a talkative sword Dao genius before. Chu Xiu raised his brows, thinking that Feng Qishao still had the nerve to talk about others. Chu Xiu had never seen such a talkative demon venerate. Ignoring Lu Jianghe, Chu Xiu waited for Feng Qishao to tire of talking and suddenly said, Actually, you already saw it, right? Feng Qishao, who had been talking incessantly just now, suddenly fell silent and put away the mischievous expression on his face. It was normal for others to not know the details of the Yunu Palace, but Sword King City was one of the 5 major sword sects just like the Yunu Palace. They must have some understanding of their past secrets. Chu Xiu would not believe that Sword King City knew nothing about it. Feng Qixiao was the future successor of Sword King City. Although he didn't look very reliable, Sword King City wouldn't hide these things from him. After a while, Feng Qixiao said in a deep voice while holding his sword, "I've heard about the Yu New Palace from the city lord. The sword-welcoming assembly isn't a good path. I came a day earlier than you, and I also tactfully reminded Brother Lu, but he didn't care. You know Brother Lu's character. Once he has decided on something, others can't change it. He only recognizes his own right and wrong, so I didn't say anything more. Brother Lu and I can be considered friends, and I also admire him. However, I won't force others. People only live one life, and it's already good enough to understand themselves. Forcibly meddling in other people's affairs isn't my style, and I don't want to do it." Feng Qixiao rarely spoke seriously, causing Chu Xiu to remain silent. To be honest, among Chu Xiu's friends, the seemingly aloof Xie Xiaolu was actually a warm-hearted person with a cold face. On the other hand, Feng Qixiao, who seemed to be on good terms with everyone, was actually the most indifferent person. Just as he said, he rarely forced others, and rarely interfered in other people's affairs. It was enough for him to understand himself. It was just like how Bai Qian of Sword King City participated in the siege against Chu Xiu. He and Chu Xiu were good friends, but at the same time, he was also a disciple of Sword King City. Feng Qixiao couldn't bring himself to betray the sect for Chu Xiu, and he also couldn't bring himself to kill his friends for the sake of the sect's interests. Therefore, he could only use a compromise to solve the problem. For Feng Qixiao, it was enough as long as he had a clear conscience. Now, it was the same for Lu Fengxian. Sword King City might not know as much as Chu Xiu, but the other party still knew about it. Therefore, Feng Qixiao also secretly reminded Lu Fengxian, but Lu Fengxian didn't notice it. Perhaps she noticed it, but she didn't believe it. For Feng Qixiao, what he could do was already the limit. He couldn't ruin the sword-welcoming assembly for Lu Fengxian, forcefully stop it, and so on. If he did, it might cause Lu Fengxian to misunderstand and increase her resentment. This was Feng Qixiao's character hidden in the deepest part of his heart. He was indifferent, fair, and only wanted a clear conscience. He did what he had to do, and as for the result, it was not his business. Chu Xiu patted Feng Qixiao on the shoulder and didn't say much. In fact, Chu Xiu's character was almost the same. Sometimes, he was even more indifferent than Feng Qixiao. It was appropriate to describe Chu Xiu in one sentence. After I die, who cares about the flood? In the end, Chu Xiu was just an egoist, and even Feng Qixiao pursued a clear conscience. Chu Xiu didn't even need to pursue a clear conscience. As long as it was good for him, even if he felt guilty, so what? But Lu Fengxian was different. He had to take care of this matter. In the past, Chu Xiu befriended Lu Fengxian with a trace of utilitarian nature, because he knew Lu Fengxian's future growth trajectory. There was no harm in befriending such a future powerhouse. But later on, LV Fengxian had always treated him sincerely, thinking that Chu Xiu was a true friend who had gone through life and death with him. Even when Chu Xiu was besieged by the entire orthodox martial arts world, LV Fengxian did not hesitate to help him with all her strength. In Lu Fengxian's heart, Chu Xiu was only a good friend and brother, regardless of righteous path or evil path. Chu Xiu couldn't forget these things. So even if the Yu New Palace's target wasn't him, Chu Xiu still came. This was also a rare occasion for Chu Xiu to participate in things that had nothing to do with his own interests. Turning his gaze to Shui Wuxiang and the other three, Chu Xiu frowned and said, "What the hell are you four doing? I don't believe that you can't see that those women from the Yu New Palace are acting." Shui Wuxiang and the other three had followed Marquis LV1 Ho to roam the world 10,000 years ago. Among them, Yan Qishao only used his muscles to think and only knew how to kill. But for Shui Wuxiang, he had already given advice to Marquis LV1 Ho 10,000 years ago. Even if he was a useless strategist, he was still an experienced old fox. Not counting the 10,000 years of being sealed and slumbering, they shouldn't be young anymore. Even if they didn't know about the heavenly sword soul, they could at least see that Yan Fian and the others were acting and plotting against Lu Fengxian, right? Chapter 768. Shui Wuxiang and the other three were also enraged by Chu Xiu's questioning. Of course, they couldn't beat Chu Xiu now, and they also knew the relationship between Lu Fengxian and Chu Xiu. Shui Wuxiang stopped the other three with an angry look and said helplessly, "Do you think we didn't warn the Lord? But the Lord's character is exactly the same as the old Lord. He doesn't listen to us at all, and instead says that we're being suspicious. Our cultivation has not recovered yet. Otherwise, even if we have to face the risk of the Lord's blame, it would be the simplest to destroy this new palace." Chu Xiu frowned and waved his hand. It seemed that Lu Fengxian was really determined to jump into the pit. Speaking of which, why didn't he see that Yan Fian had such great charm? Now wasn't the time to talk. Chu Xiu directly followed Shui Wuxiang and the others into the Yu Palace. The central hall of the Yu Palace was already filled with seats, and most of the martial artists who came to participate in the sword-welcoming assembly were already seated. Originally, as an uninvited guest, Chu Xiu didn't have a seat. But the Yu Palace didn't want to complicate matters, so they specially arranged a seat for Chu Xiu. But just as Chu Xiu sat down, an angry voice came from the opposite side. "Chu Xiu! How dare you appear here?" Chu Xiu looked up and saw an old Taoist wearing a gray robe looking at him with a face full of hatred, as if he wanted to swallow Chu Xiu alive. Needless to say, Chu Xiu knew that he was definitely from Chunyang Dao sect. Chu Xiu had already formed a grudge with Chunyang Dao sect before the Great War between the righteous and demonic sects, and he killed the people of Chunyang Dao sect in the Great War between the righteous and demonic sections. At this time, if the warriors of Chunyang Dao sect saw Chu Xiu with a calm expression, it would be strange. However, Chu Xiu was still a little puzzled. He really couldn't figure out what the people of Chunyang Dao sect were thinking. The strength of Chunyang Dao sect had declined to such an extent. The older generation might still have some foundation, and the number of martial Dao grandmasters was not small. However, among the younger generation, Chunyang Dao sect did not have many outstanding figures. To be precise, there was no one. If this went on, in another few decades or 100 years, the older generation of Chunyang Dao sect warriors would have died of old age, and the new generation of Chunyang Dao sect would definitely decline. If it were other sects, they would definitely think about how to avoid such a thing. Only Chunyang Dao sect was still stubborn, thinking about how to get rid of demons and defend the Dao. For example, the old Taoist knew that he was no match for Chu Xiu, but he still couldn't help but take the initiative to provoke him. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said lightly, "Why? Do you have a problem with me appearing here? Do you want to get back your dignity here after losing in the Great War between Taoists and demonic sects? All right, I'll keep you company." Chu Xiu did not even place a single one of these old fellows from the Pure Yang Dao sect in his eyes. Only Shi Yunzi, who had held the Pure Yang sword to stop Chu Xiu last time, was a little troublesome. At this time, the people of Yu Palace also noticed the commotion here. They hurriedly came over to mediate, and finally made the old Taoist of Chunyang Dao sect calm down for the time being. They gave him a way out, and blood would not be spilled before the start of the sword-welcoming meet. However, after the storm passed, Chu Xiu felt that the atmosphere in the hall was a little strange. Most of the warriors present looked at Chu Xiu with disgust or malice. In short, they did not look at him well. Touching his chin, Chu Xiu murmured, "Why do I feel that the atmosphere here is a little strange?" Feng Qi Shao ridiculed from the side. "Why don't you take a look at the situation now? How many people have you killed in the Great War between Taoists and Taoists, and how many warriors have you provoked? It would be strange if they showed you a good attitude." During the Great War between Taoists and Taoists, Chu Xiu was in the limelight. Even if some of the sects had no enmity with Chu Xiu, they would not have a good impression of Chu Xiu, because this was the Yu Palace's sword-welcoming meet. Although the Yu Palace did not participate in the Great War between Taoists and Taoists, it was still considered a righteous Dao sect. Therefore this time, the Yu Palace had invited warriors from righteous Dao sections. The Great War between Taoists and Taoists had just ended, and a guy like Chu Xiu, who was in the limelight in the Great War between Taoists and Taoists, appeared here. No matter how one looked at it, it was a kind of arrogant provocation. It would be strange if they showed Chu Xiu a good attitude. However, due to Chu Xiu's fierce reputation and the Yu Palace's face, a large group of people did not jump out to clamor to exterminate Taoists. Only the old Taoist of Chunyang Dao sect could not help but stand out and say a few words. At this time, Lin Fengya also walked into the main hall with her people. She was dressed in a white palace dress, and her appearance was beautiful and dignified. Although she was a little old, she had a kind of mature charm. Everyone present could not take their eyes off her and sighed at the same time. Lin Fengya was also a rising star of the Yu Palace when she was young. Back then, she had also attracted the love of many Jianghu heroes. Unfortunately, due to her relationship with the Yu Palace, in the end, Lin Fengya did not choose any of the young heroes of that generation. Some of the martial artists present were from the same generation as Lin Fengya, and they all felt a little emotional. That was their youth. Walking to the center, Lin Fengya had a smile on her face. She said in a low voice, "Thank you all for coming all the way to my Yu Palace to participate in the sword welcoming assembly. If there's more, I won't." Before she could finish her sentence, 2 more people came in from outside. Lin Fengya immediately frowned. It was almost time. Who would rush to come at this time? This was too unruly. However, after seeing the people who came, Lin Fengya did not dare to say anything more. This was because the people who came were an old man and a young man. The young one was Ying Bailu. The old one was Ying Clan's housekeeper, Uncle Fu. Shongshui Ying Clan's status in Eastern Qi went without saying. Even if it was just a junior of Shongshui Ying Clan, Lin Fengya did not dare to say too much. However, Lin Fengya was puzzled. Why would Ying Bailu come? Could it be because of Yan Fian? Actually, this time, the Yu Palace had sent an invitation to Shongshui Ying Clan. Whether they came or not was Shongshui Ying Clan's business, but whether they sent the invitation or not was Yu Palace's business. Lin Fengya did not see Shongshui Ying Clan's figure earlier. She thought that they would not come. She did not expect Ying Bailu to arrive just in time. Ying Bailu cupped his hands and said, "Palace Lord Lin, please forgive me. I came a little late." Lin Fengya smiled and said, "Young Master Ying, there's no need to be like this. The sword welcoming assembly has not started yet. It's not late." Ying Bailu shook his head and said, "No, it's still too late. Because I didn't intend to come this time, and it's even to the extent that I didn't even know about it. I only found out about it when my servants told me about it." Lin Fengya's expression was a little ugly. For the first time, she felt that Ying Bailu was not good with words. If he did not want to go, wouldn't that mean that Shongshui Ying Clan looked down on the Yu Palace? Although Shongshui Ying Clan had the right to do so. However, Lin Fengya still forced a smile and said, "In that case, please take a seat, young Master Ying." Ying Bailu shook his head and said, "There's no need to sit. I did not come here to participate in the sword welcoming assembly. I just came to solve my own problem." Hearing this, the expressions on the faces of the people present immediately became unfathomable. Ying Bailu had previously pursued Yan Fian. This was something that many people knew. In the end, Yan Fian chose Lu Fengxian. However, Ying Bailu did not have any reaction after that. Now, it seemed that this person was preparing to use his power to oppress others, or was he trying to snatch his love away? Yan Fian stood up and said with a frown, "Young Master Ying, I have already made it very clear to you. Between you and I." Ying Bailu waved his hand and interrupted Yan Fian. "Miss Yan, you said it clearly, and I also understand. Things like feelings cannot be forced. After you got together with Brother Lu, have you seen me come to disturb you even once? This time, I did not come for you, but for myself. Everyone in the pugilistic world knows that I am pursuing you, but in the end, you chose Lu Fengxian, Brother Lu. I only came to challenge Brother Lu, not to prove anything to you, Miss Yan. I just want to prove one thing to the entire pugilistic world. I, Ying Bailu, am not worse than anyone else." Ever since he was young, Ying Bailu had never lost. He was number 1 in everything, be it the zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, or mathematics. When had he ever lost to anyone? Therefore, although in the eyes of outsiders, Ying Bailu's character was very indifferent, and he did not fight or fight, even if it was a ranking on the Longhu list, in reality, it was not that Ying Bailu did not fight. He was just too lazy to fight. But in terms of feelings, he had to admit that he had lost to Lu Fengxian. He had pursued Yan Fian for so long, but in the end, Yan Fian chose Lu Fengxian. Things like feelings could not be reasoned with. It was won or lost, so he had never asked Yan Fian how he was inferior to Lu Fengxian, and he had never disturbed her. From the day Yan Fian chose Lu Fengxian, Ying Bailu knew that he had lost, and he took the initiative to let go of this relationship. Today, he did not come to take back Yan Fian, nor did he come to find trouble with Lu Fengxian. He only wanted to fight, to prove that he, Ying Bailu, was not worse than anyone else. Ying Bailu did not fight, that was true. But he also had his own pride. Yan Fian was about to say something, but Ying Bailu spoke first. Miss Yan, I have already said that this matter has nothing to do with you. There is still some time before the sword welcoming meet. The Yu Palace can't even afford to delay this little bit of time, right? I am also an old acquaintance of Brother Lu. This time, it is only a matter of victory and defeat, not a matter of life and death, so you don't have to worry that it will affect the next sword welcoming meet. As he spoke, Ying Bailu took out a bottle of elixirs and said, This is the 8 Revolution Elixir, Green Dragon Emu Wood Heaven Reversing Life Transformation Pill. Any injury can be healed in a short time. In case of accidental injury, with this bottle of elixir, it will not affect Brother Lu's participation in the sword welcoming meet. Chu Xiao, who was behind, rubbed his head. Green Dragon Emu Wood Heaven Reversing Life Transformation Pill? Why did this name sound so familiar? Chapter 769. Chu Xiao did not stop Ying Bailu from challenging Lu Fengxian, nor did he express any opinion. Speaking of which, Ying Bailu was also the one who was deceived. His infatuation was no less than Lu Fengxian's. One had to know that with Ying Bailu's status, looks and strength, the number of women who wanted to marry him could line up from Eastern Qi to Western Chu. But after so many years, he only liked Yan Fian. He was infatuated enough. Moreover, Chu Xiao did not feel any killing intent from Ying Bailu. This time, Ying Bailu was indeed fighting for himself, not for anyone else. Yan Fian still wanted to stop him. The sword welcoming conference was about to begin. She did not want any accidents. At this time, Lu Fengxian suddenly stood up and said, Since Brother Ying wants to fight, then I will fight with you. Brother Ying, if you want to prove that you are not inferior to others, then so do I, Lu Fengxian. Yan Fian still wanted to stop him, but Lu Fengxian shook her head and said, Fian, this has nothing to do with you. No one can refuse a challenge between martial artists. Don't worry, I will not delay the sword welcoming conference. As the sound of his voice faded, LV Fengxian directly walked out with his ancient halberd. Yan Fian's brows furrowed deeply, but she did not try to stop him. After spending so much time with Lu Fengxian, Yan Fian understood Lu Fengxian's personality. As long as he made a decision, no one could change it. A smile appeared on Ying Bailu's face. Brother Lu, you are straightforward. As soon as he finished speaking, Ying Bailu's ink-colored energy began to swirl around him, and a series of furious dragon roars rang out around him. The stellar energy transformed into a dragon, and his aura instantly rose to the extreme. This generation's Longhu leaderboard was filled with outstanding young talents, especially during this period of time. Almost everyone had placed their attention on Zhang Qingzhen, Chu Xiao, and Zhong Xian. Getting out of the Longhu leaderboard and entering the Wind Cloud leaderboard. In the past, such abilities might only appear once every few hundred years, but now, there were 3 of them in the same era. However, the crowd had neglected the fact that the other geniuses on the Longhu leaderboard were not weak either. Whether it was Feng Qixiao or Ying Bailu, if not for Chu Xiao and the others, these few could also be the young elites who could lead an era. When Chu Xiao saw Ying Bailu's power, he knew that Ying Bailu had improved a lot compared to the time when Chu Xiao fought him. Lu Fengxian held halberd in her hand and was surrounded by demonic aura. The demonic aura was so thick that it even covered up his handsome face. It was as if a demon had descended. Chu Xiao narrowed his eyes. He really did not expect that Lu Fengxian's cultivation had also reached this level. When Chu Xiao used the 9 Heavens Fiend Golden Body, he thought that his attainment in this cultivation method was probably higher than Lu Fengxian's. But now, it seemed that Lu Fengxian's attainment in this cultivation method was not inferior to his. Of course, in terms of physical cultivation, even if the realm was not taken into account, Chu Xiao was still stronger. After all, he also cultivated the Great Vajra Divine Strength, Buddhist Golden Body, Devil Sect Body Refinement. Now, Chu Xiao only needed 1 Dao Sect Mysterious Technique to gather all the body refinement cultivation methods of the 3 major sections. The halberd in Lu Fengxian's hand clenched tightly. When it fell with a loud bang, it suddenly erupted with a shocking power. It even shook the entire Yu Palace, and the formation was immediately activated. Lu Jiang, he said in surprise in Chu Xiao's mind. He is actually a martial artist who completely cultivates the strength Dao. Your little brother is very ambitious. Cultivating the strength Tao to the peak is not an easy path. Using strength to break all kinds of techniques, but how could it be so easy in reality? People cultivate all kinds of complicated martial techniques. How could it be possible to rely on simple strength to break all kinds of techniques? If you want to break all kinds of techniques with strength, you need to be several times or even 10 times stronger than your opponent. Chu Xiu had only seen two martial artists who purely cultivated the strength Tao. One was Chen Qingdi's fist, and the other was Lu Fengxian's halberd. This path of cultivation was much more difficult than that of an ordinary martial artist. Even 500 years ago, when heroes and geniuses were emerging in large numbers, only a few people succeeded in cultivating it. The ancient halberd smashed downwards. The boundless aura it exuded made LV Fengxian seem like a devil god. As the halberd descended, one could even faintly hear the roars of a devil god, incomparably horrifying. Lu Fengxian did not use the unparalleled divine weapon of Marquis Lu Wenho in the past. The unparalleled divine weapon consumed too much energy. Once it was used, it would not be a competition, but a battle to the death. But even so, Lu Fengxian's halberd carried absolute power. Even some of the martial masters present were shocked. They wondered if they could block Lu Fengxian's halberd if they were in her shoes. Ying Bailu took a step forward, and the ink-colored astral chi around him turned into a dragon. He formed a fist seal and met Lu Fengxian's powerful halberd without dodging or retreating. A loud bang rang out. As the astral energy exploded, even the Yu Palace's formation began to tremble and let out a series of loud noises. Lin Fengya's expression suddenly changed. She immediately joined forces with the dozen or so unity of heaven and man realm martial artists of the Yu Palace to pour their true chi into the formation. If they didn't use their full strength, the Yu Palace's formation would not last for long. At that time, the entire palace would be completely destroyed by the two of them. Under Lu Fengxian's halberd strike, absolute power erupted. Ying Bailu's ink-colored dragon head shattered, and he was blasted back several steps. But at that moment, Ying Bailu's fist smashed down, and his astral chi dragon tail swung repeatedly. He actually forcibly withstood Lu Fengxian's powerful halberd strike. The ink-colored astral chi around him transformed into a dragon claw. The claw's power seemed to envelop heaven and earth. It tore apart the demonic chi in front of Lu Fengxian and clawed at her. Lu Fengxian let out a low roar, the ancient halberd sweeping horizontally around his body, resembling a demonic god. Every time it swept out, an earth-shattering explosion would resound out. Under the continuous sweep of the ancient halberd, the astral chi dragon claw had already shattered, the black astral chi dissipating in all directions. Even the ground beneath their feet was filled with cracks. Lu Fengxian's unrivaled demon god halberd was similar to Chen Qingdi's fist intent, containing very few variations, only extreme power. Block it, and you have a chance to win. Fail, and you'll be the one lying on the ground. But Ying Bailu's expression didn't change at all. With a wave of his hand, the black dragon roared and turned into a long saber, slashing down. The dragon head as the hilt, the dragon body as the blade. Unsheathing the great dragon saber, it could behead the world. A piercingly sharp edge descended with a violent momentum. The saber and halberd collided, and the shock waves were exceptionally shocking. Although it was Ying Bailu's great dragon saber that shattered in the end, a crack also appeared on Lu Fengxian's halberd. Even the demonic chi around Lu Fengxian's body thinned a little, revealing his handsome face, but his eyes were tainted by demonic chi. Ying Bailu didn't stop. This time, his ink-colored astral chi condensed into a dragon spear, and he thrust it at Lu Fengxian with an indomitable momentum. Both sides clashed again, and each time they exchanged blows, the power behind each exchange was incomparably terrifying. Everyone was watching intently. The fight between the two was very exciting. It could be said that most of the martial Dao masters present would not dare to say that they could beat LV Fengxian and Bailu for sure. Lu Fengxian's strength was unparalleled, and she walked the path of suppressing others with sheer strength. On the other hand, Ying Bailu's foundation was also incomparably strong. In terms of pure strength, he wasn't much weaker than Lu Fengxian. Most importantly, Ying Bailu's martial Dao was ever-changing. Although he didn't use any weapons, he could condense any kind of chi from his astral chi. He could use almost every kind of chi with great proficiency. Although he couldn't be ranked at the top among those in the same cultivation realm, there were only a handful of people who could match Ying Bailu. Just as the two of them had reached a critical moment in their battle, Chu Xiao suddenly frowned. In his mind, Lu Jiang he suddenly chuckled. Your little brother is about to lose. That Ying family brat is not ordinary. Shongshui River's Ying clan, the Black Dragon ancestral bloodline. Although the Ying clan's people spend most of their time in hibernation, it's undeniable that every generation of the Ying family's disciples is not weak. As soon as Lu Jianghe's voice fell, the ink-colored astral chi around Ying Bailu instantly rose to its peak. He formed a seal with his hands, and the ink-colored astral chi transformed into black dragons that coiled around his body. They were vivid and lifelike, but their artistic conception was somewhat different from before. Almost all martial artists in the oneness of heaven and man realm could condense their astral chi into objects. In theory, any martial artist who could externalize astral chi could do it. However, there were only a few who could truly condense their astral chi into objects. Moreover, Ying Bailu didn't just have one black dragon around him. He had condensed 2, 3, 4, and in the end, he had even condensed 9 black dragons. As they roared, they transformed into 9 dragon seals that fell with a loud rumble. They completely enveloped Lu Fengxian, and they continuously strangled her. Halberd danced madly, and Lu Fengxian's eyes had already turned crimson. The demon god's unparalleled halberd seemed to possess the might of a demon god. The horrifying devilish might cause the expressions of the people present to change slightly. In truth, none of the people present had regarded Lu Fengxian as a member of the Devil Dao. Compared to Chu Xiao, Lu Fengxian's actions were indeed very kind. He had almost never done any evil deeds. Although he had killed many people, he usually only killed people who wanted to kill him. However, looking at Lu Fengxian's current appearance, who would believe that he wasn't a member of the Devil Dao? At the very least, in terms of cultivation method alone, Lu Fengxian was a genuine member of the Devil Dao. There was no doubt about it. Just when the demonic qi around Lu Fengxian had reached its peak, the cracks on halberd in his hand gradually widened. Finally, with a loud bang, it completely shattered. The weapon scattered in all directions, and the demonic qi around Lu Fengxian dissipated. Ying Bailu's situation was different. The 9 dragons around him did not dissipate. Instead, they merged into his body, causing his aura to grow stronger and stronger. At last, it reached its peak, and he directly stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. Feng Qi Xiao stood up abruptly. His expression changed, and he subconsciously spat out a word, F***CK. Chapter 770. Although the battle between Ying Bailu and Lu Fengxian seemed to be Ying Bailu's victory, Lu Fengxian did not actually lose. He only lost this time because his weapon was at a disadvantage. If he had used the unparalleled divine weapon, Ying Bailu would not have won as easily as he did now. Of course, if Lu Fengxian used the unparalleled divine weapon, Ying Bailu would still have some trump cards up his sleeves. However, at that time, it would no longer be a competition, but a battle of life and death. On the contrary, the crowd was surprised at the beginning that Ying Bailu became a martial Dao Grandmaster, but they were not that surprised anymore. Ying Bailu was ranked 3rd on the Longhu leaderboard, but everyone knew that he rarely fought and kept a low profile. If he went all out, he could compete with Feng Qi Xiao for the first place. Therefore, it was normal for him to become a martial Dao Grandmaster now. Of course, it was normal for Ying Bailu to win, but Feng Qi Xiao's heart was about to explode. Before this, Feng Qi Xiao did not care much about winning or losing, so he did not care much about the Longhu leaderboard. Geniuses like Zhang Qingzhen, Zhong Xian, and Chu Xiao were all ranked ahead of him. Why should he waste his energy to compete with them? But now, all 3 of them had become martial Dao Grandmasters. He had been criticized by the old guys in Sword King City several times. Who would have thought that Ying Bailu, who was ranked behind him, would step on him and become a martial Dao Grandmaster? This matter would definitely make those old guys even angrier. Feng Qi Xiao could imagine what he would have to endure when he returned to Sword King City. After sitting down again, Feng Qi Xiao rubbed his head in annoyance. He suddenly raised his head and sighed. Since ancient times, love has always been filled with regret. Ying Bailu can be considered an infatuated person. I'm afraid he was hurt by love this time, causing his state of mind to fall to the extreme. He had to sublimate before he finally broke through. Brother Chu, do you think I should find someone to love and try this feeling? Maybe I can make a breakthrough or something. Chu Xiao glanced at him and said, "Your request is quite simple. In Yanjing City's Spring Moon Brothel, there are 10 silver taels for a night of love, and there are also 100 silver taels for a night of love. If you want to try, as long as your body can take it, I'll arrange it." Feng Qishao subconsciously wanted to thank him, but then he felt that it was a little inappropriate. What? A handsome and elegant genius like him, Feng Qishao, was only fit to find love in a brothel? At this moment, Ying Bai Lu cupped his hands at Lu Fengxian and said, "Brother Lu, thank you for letting me win." With that, Ying Bai Lu tossed the green dragon emu heaven reversing life transformation pill to Lu Fengxian and turned to leave. At this time, Uncle Fu whispered to Ying Bai Lu, "Young master, since you're here, why don't you leave after the sword welcoming assembly?" Ying Bai Lu glanced at Uncle Fu with a slightly surprised expression. This was because Uncle Fu was very opposed to him pursuing Yan Fian. Yan Fian didn't agree to his pursuit. In Uncle Fu's opinion, Yan Fian wasn't even worthy of his young master. And in Uncle Fu's opinion, those women from the Yu Nu Palace were nothing good. Therefore, Uncle Fu didn't want Ying Bai Lu to have anything to do with the Yu Nu Palace. Now, Uncle Fu saw that he had thought it through, so he didn't mind. Ying Bai Lu didn't think too much about it. Since Uncle Fu said so, Ying Bai Lu also sat in the back. Seeing that things didn't get out of hand, Lin Fengya and Yan Fian breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Lu Fengxian said to Yan Fian, "Fian, we can start the sword welcoming assembly." Yan Fian said, "You just finished fighting with young Master Ying. Recover some true qi first." Lu Fengxian shook her head and said, "There's no need. I was just sparring with young Master Ying just now. It wasn't a real life and death battle. I didn't expend much energy. I can just attack directly." At this moment, Chu Xiao suddenly said, "Brother Lu, since you're preparing for the sword welcoming assembly, it's better to be more cautious. I'll give you some things." Lu Fengxian walked over to Chu Xiao without thinking. Yan Fian, who was behind him, frowned but didn't say anything. Chu Xiao pulled Lu Fengxian to the side. Before Lu Fengxian could open his mouth to ask anything, Chu Xiao casually stuffed a bottle of blood recovery pills into his hands. But he secretly transmitted his voice. "Brother Lu, if I said that there's something strange about this sword welcoming assembly, that Yan Fian and the others are scheming against you, and that the consequences will even make you cripple your cultivation and shorten your lifespan, would you believe me or not?" Lu Fengxian was stunned. He looked at Chu Xiao with a surprised gaze, and then subconsciously looked at Yan Fian. After a long while, he nodded his head heavily and said, "I believe you." Chu Xiao was stunned. Lu Fengxian believed him so easily? This seemed to be somewhat beyond his expectations. But then Lu Fengxian said, "But I also believe that Fian won't harm me. Brother Chu, you're doing this for my own good. But there must be some misunderstanding." Chu Xiao patted his head. He knew it would be like this. This was Lu Fengxian's character. "Then have you ever thought about what you would do if this matter is true? I've already told you the consequences. Your cultivation will be crippled, and even your lifespan will be shortened." Lu Fengxian shook his head and said, "Since it's just in case, it's not absolute. Since it's not absolute, how can I suspect Fian? If it really happens, then I, Lu Fengxian, am blind and trusted the wrong person. But if it doesn't happen, and I suspect Fian, then I'll be letting down my own conscience. I, Lu Fengxian, don't want to betray anyone in my life. If someone betrays me, then I will betray them. Things that haven't happened, then we'll talk about it after it happens." After saying that, Lu Fengxian put away the bottle of blood recovery pills and walked straight to the center of the hall. Chu Xiao shook his head slightly. For a person like Lu Fengxian, you could say that he's stupid, but you could also say that he's really good. Being friends with such a person, at least you won't have to worry about his betrayal. And Chu Xiao and Lu Fengxian just happened to have two different personalities. He looked at everyone with a suspicious attitude. Lu Fengxian believed that humans were good by nature, while he believed that humans were evil by nature. But it didn't matter. He had already guessed Lu Fengxian's answer. Since he was already here, he wouldn't sit and watch Lu Fengxian get into trouble. At this time, Yan Fian saw that Chu Xiao didn't say anything to Lu Fengxian, and she also breathed a sigh of relief. Lin Fengya said in a clear voice, "Sword spirit, please." As her voice fell, For female disciples of the Yu Nu Palace carried a huge formation plate and placed it in the hall. On the formation plate was an incomparably resplendent, pure white long sword. It didn't contain any impurities, and it looked like it was made of crystal. It was abnormally magnificent. Lu Jianghe spat in Chu Xiu's mind and sneered. That's it. This sword was specially made by the Red Lotus Demon Venerable with 10,000 years of ice crystals from the northern snow mountain. Other than looking good, it has no other use. At this time, Lin Fengya stood in front of the heavenly sword and bowed respectfully. Yu Nu Palace's 96th Palace Lord, Lin Fengya, please sword spirit, baptize my Yu Nu Palace's disciple. After Lin Fengya finished speaking, the heavenly sword instantly released an extremely resplendent power, and the image of a nine-tailed celestial fox appeared in the hall. Its entire body was pure white without any impurities. Only its eyes were scarlet red, but it made the nine-tailed celestial fox look a little more charming. 9 large fox tails floated behind it, gently dancing, but it made the nine-tailed celestial fox look incomparably holy. It didn't have the slightest ruthlessness of a ferocious beast. Lu Jianghe sneered. See? This beast's appearance is really not bad. Otherwise, the Red Lotus Demon Venerable wouldn't have suddenly wanted to capture it as a pet. Ugly ferocious beasts would have long been skinned and used to refine pills and weapons. Their remnant souls would also be used as artifact spirits. Chu Xiu didn't care about Lu Jianghe's nagging. He just stared at the nine-tailed celestial fox's remnant soul without blinking, ready to make a move at any time. The nine-tailed celestial fox's remnant soul gracefully walked in front of Lu Fengxian, and its 9 large foxtails completely enveloped Lu Fengxian. Shui Wuxiang and the other 3 revealed a trace of coldness in their eyes. If Chu Xiu wasn't here, the Yu Nu Palace's slut dared to scheme against their lord, they would have already made a move. I say, are you guys prepared? Chu Xiu suddenly asked Shui Wuxiang and the others. No matter what, these 4 were LV1 Ho's battle generals in the past. Even if Lu Fengxian didn't listen to them now, they wouldn't just sit still and wait for death. Shui Wuxiang smiled. We have made some preparations. The Yu Nu Palace's array formation has been tampered with by me. But now that official Chu is here, our methods can only play a supporting role. Chu Xiu's strength was there for all to see. With him around, he naturally wouldn't sit still and watch anything happen to Lu Fengxian. According to Shui Wuxiang's original plan, if Chu Xiu didn't make a move, then they would use all the methods they had prepared and escape with Lu Fengxian in the chaos. At this time, the nine-tailed celestial fox looked at Lu Fengxian, who was wrapped in its 9 tails, and its eyes revealed a satisfied look. For so many years, the food that the Yu Nu Palace had offered to it was the most delicious. Her power was incomparably pure, and she had a pure heart that hadn't been polluted. Her essence, energy, and spirit were at their peak. From the 9-tailed celestial fox, a demonic aura eroded Lu Fengxian's will and began to absorb her essence, energy, and spirit. If it was an ordinary Yu Nu Palace martial artist, they would have already been brainwashed by the Yu Nu Palace. Moreover, the 9-tailed celestial fox's power was inclined towards mental force. They wouldn't be able to detect it while absorbing essence, energy, and spirit. Therefore, those Yu Nu Palace martial artists who had their essence, energy, and spirit absorbed would only feel very tired. They thought that they had consumed too much energy during the baptism of the heavenly sword. It wasn't until some time after the baptism ended that their cultivation began to rapidly decline. But by that time, it was already too late. But for some reason, the 9-tailed celestial fox's power couldn't invade Lu Fengxian's mind. In practically an instant, Lu Fengxian knew that something was wrong. What Brother Chu said was true. Yan Fian was lying to him. Chapter 771. To people like Chu Xiu and Lu Jianghe, being hurt by love was very pretentious. It was even more pretentious in the eyes of people like Feng Qishao, who didn't even pay to visit a brothel. But to people like Lu Fengxian and Ying Bailu, who were infatuated with love, it was a huge blow. With Lu Fengxian's personality, it wasn't that he hadn't been betrayed before. In the past, when Chu Xiu had first met LV Fengxian, he had said that among the friends he had befriended, there were those who were reliable and loyal, but there were also those who would forsake righteousness at the sight of profit. But when Lu Fengxian was betrayed by these people, he only felt sad, but when he was betrayed by Yan Fian, he felt his heart die. Because he had given up his heart, and he had given up too much. All of this was completely annihilated in an instant. Yan Fian seemed to feel Lu Fengxian's mood, and her eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of guilt. The Sky Sword baptism was about to begin, and in the entire Yunnu Palace, no one met the requirements of the nine-tailed celestial fox. Her master couldn't, and she couldn't either. So when she first got close to Lu Fengxian, it was with a utilitarian motive. And apart from Lu Fengxian, she couldn't find anyone else on the Longhu list who met this requirement. Ying Bai Lu couldn't. If he dared to plot against the successor of the Shongshui Ying clan, he was simply tired of living. Feng Qi Xiao couldn't either. Not to mention the strength of the Sword King city itself, Feng Qi Xiao's personality wouldn't have anything to do with her. As for Li Fialian, he came and went like a ghost, and his figure couldn't be seen at all. So Yan Fian could only choose Lu Fengxian. But humans weren't plants, so how could they be emotionless? At first, Yan Fian did have the idea of using Lu Fengxian, but in the process of interacting with Lu Fengxian, she gradually changed. Previously, Lu Fengxian said that Yan Fian had been cultivating hard before the start of the sword welcoming conference. Actually, that wasn't acting, but really cultivating hard. As long as Yan Fian could meet the requirements of the nine-tailed celestial fox, she would rather participate in the Sky Sword baptism herself than let Lu Fengxian come. Anyway, as long as the Yunnu Palace received the protection of the Sky Sword for another 100 years, they would definitely be able to cultivate another successor. Yunnu Palace would definitely be able to Fengxian for another 100 years. Seeing that the sword welcoming meet was about to begin, between LV Fengxian's friendship and the interests of the sect, Yan Fian finally chose the latter. However, she had already made preparations. After this, she would protect LV Fengxian for a lifetime. As long as their Yunnu Palace still existed, LV Fengxian would be fine. But at this time, Lu Jiang he said, "Wait, there seems to be something wrong with that little brother of yours." He actually resisted the erosion of the nine-tailed celestial fox's power with his own willpower. Tiska, his willpower is really strong. But that was when Lu Jianghe said, "Hold on. There seems to be something wrong with that little brother of yours." He actually resisted the nine-tailed celestial fox's power with his own will. Tiska, his will is really strong. Although Lu Jianghe, the fake demon lord, seemed unreliable at times, he was still a good judge of character. At this time, wrapped up by the nine-tailed celestial fox, Lu Fengxian was surrounded by demon qi, and his eyes were already stained with a touch of red. At this moment, LV Fengxian, who was wrapped up by the nine-tailed fox, was surrounded by demonic aura and her eyes were tainted with a scarlet-red color. At this time, the nine-tailed celestial fox, who was originally very elegant and indifferent, also revealed a look of doubt. The nine-tailed celestial fox, who was originally elegant and indifferent, revealed a doubtful look at this moment. That nine-tailed celestial fox, who was originally very elegant and indifferent, also revealed a look of doubt. The nine-tailed celestial fox's scarlet eyes couldn't help but reveal an ominous glint. The nine-tailed celestial fox's scarlet eyes couldn't help but reveal an ominous glint. No matter how good its appearance was, it was still an ancient vicious beast. Back in ancient times, it had eaten countless cultivators like desserts. Its temper was definitely not good. So after discovering that Lu Fengxian wasn't eroded by its mind power at all, the nine-tailed celestial fox's nine tails shrunk even tighter, and a burst of aura bloomed. Seeing this scene, the others didn't feel anything wrong, but Lin Fengya and Yan Fian frowned at the same time. This was because such a situation had never happened in the previous sword welcoming meet. Could it be that something had happened? At this time, Lu Fengxian suddenly opened his eyes. There was no longer any human spirit in his eyes, only boundless scarlet and powerful demon qi. Wisps of black demon qi coiled around his body. The demon qi was so detailed that it condensed into an armor-like shape around Lu Fengxian's body. At this time, the aura around Lu Fengxian had also become extremely fierce. That fierce aura was so fierce that even the nine-tailed celestial fox couldn't contain it, and it leaked outside. Everyone present was slightly stunned when they felt this aura. Resisting so fiercely, was this still the heavenly sword baptism? Why did it feel like he was fighting with his life on the line? At this time, Shui Wuxiang and the other three were extremely excited, because this aura was a familiar feeling to them from 10,000 years ago. LV Fengxian suddenly raised his head, and the powerful demonic aura around him condensed into a cyclone tornado. His scarlet eyes stared straight at the nine-tailed celestial fox, and he shouted in a low voice, "Evil creature! How dare you!" This voice was low and hoarse, and it was very different from Lu Fengxian's voice before. And hearing this voice, and seeing Lu Fengxian's current state, the nine-tailed celestial fox suddenly began to tremble, and his eyes revealed a look of horror. Previously, he didn't recognize Lu Fengxian's appearance, but now that he felt Lu Fengxian's aura, and then associated it with his current appearance, the nine-tailed celestial fox suddenly remembered the demon-like existence from 10,000 years ago. That incomparably powerful existence, even more fierce than these ferocious beasts. Boundless demon chi condensed into halberd, and Lu Fengxian chopped with one hand. With a loud bang, the nine-tailed celestial fox that wrapped around Lu Fengxian was completely torn apart, and even the nine-tailed celestial fox was sent flying to one side. Lin Fengya and Yan Fian's expressions suddenly changed. What was going on? How was it possible that even the nine-tailed celestial fox couldn't suppress Lu Fengxian? It should be known that even if the nine-tailed celestial fox's power was close to exhaustion, and even if there were 10 Lin Fengya, she would still be no match for the nine-tailed celestial fox. In the end, not only did the nine-tailed celestial fox fail to absorb Lu Fengxian's essence, but it was also sent flying? However, she didn't know that although the nine-tailed celestial fox was not so weak, it was frightened just now, not by Lu Fengxian, but by LV Wenho. 10,000 years ago, the demon god LV Wenho was really like a demon god that had descended to the world, and he was almost unstoppable. Whether it was the righteous path or the demonic path, even these ferocious beasts had heard of LV Wenho's name. He was so powerful that it made people tremble. At this time, the powerful aura around Lu Fengxian had gradually disappeared. What he had devoured was only the fragment of LV Wenho's primordial spirit, and it was not even a remnant soul. When his power was stimulated to the extreme just now, what he revealed was only an instinct that belonged to the fragment of LV Wenho's primordial spirit. Even if LV Wenho was already dead, he could not be humiliated by an evil creature. At that moment, the demonic chi battle armor around Lu Fengxian's body that could be described as meticulous began to retract. It did not dissipate, but it was fusing into Lu Fengxian's body crazily. Seeing this familiar scene, Feng Qi Xiao's expression changed a little. Following that, the aura on Lu Fengxian's body began to rise continuously. In the end, it seemed to have broken through a bottleneck and stepped into a new world, advancing to a martial Dao grandmaster. Feng Qi Xiao slumped on the chair with a sullen expression. After a while he spat out two words. F***CK. F***CK. To be honest, even Chu Xiu did not expect this to happen. Lu Fengxian actually relied on this pressure to step into the martial Dao grandmaster stage, turning a bad thing into a good thing. Of course, the one who felt the most aggrieved was Feng Qi Xiao. At that moment, he felt that Lu Fengxian and Ying Bailu had teamed up to toy with him. After Zhong Xian advanced to a martial Dao grandmaster, who was the first on the Longhu leaderboard? It was him, Feng Qi Xiao. Although it was his turn to be the first on the Longhu leaderboard after everyone before him advanced to a martial Dao grandmaster, which was not nice to say, he was at least the first on the Longhu leaderboard, right? In the end, he only sat on the Longhu leaderboard for a short period of time before he was overtaken by the people behind him. Moreover, he did not overtake the first place, but directly advanced to a martial Dao grandmaster and did not mess around with him on the Longhu leaderboard. Ying Bailu and Lu Fengxian were in third place and fourth place respectively. Both of them had overtaken him to become a martial Dao grandmaster. Feng Qi Xiao could imagine the inhumane treatment he would receive when he returned to Sword King City. Originally, Heavenly King Shen and the others had planned for Feng Qi Xiao to be the third to become a martial Dao grandmaster. In the end, he did not even have a place in the top 5, let alone third place. Feng Qi Xiao looked at Chu Xiu with a look of exasperation and said, "Brother Chu, I feel that I should really have an unforgettable passionate love, the kind that doesn't cost money." At that moment, Chu Xiu did not argue with Feng Qi Xiao. Instead, he stared intently at the scene, and at the same time, he tightened his grip on the hilt of the saber at his waist. From the moment Lu Fengxian exposed her aura to fight the nine-tailed celestial fox, to the moment he swept away the remnant soul of the nine-tailed celestial fox with a halberd and became a martial Dao grandmaster, even an idiot could tell that something was wrong. If the Yu Nu Palace was not in the wrong, then there was something wrong with Lu Fengxian. At that moment, Uncle Fu sighed beside Ying Bailu and said, "Young master, Do you understand now? Ying Bailu's expression was a little uncertain. Of course he understood. Although he did not know Lu Fengxian for long, he trusted Lu Fengxian's character. Since Lu Fengxian had promised the Yu New Palace to participate in the sword welcoming meet, she would not cause trouble here. Looking at the elegant and beautiful sky sword soul, it now looked like a ferocious demonic beast, timid and ferocious. How did it look like a sword soul at all? Thinking about it this way, it was very clear who was in the right and who was in the wrong. After a while, Ying Bailu said in a low voice, "Uncle Fu, do father and the old ancestor know about this?" Uncle Fu nodded and said, "A little but not too much. If you don't want people to know, don't do it." No matter how well the Yu New Palace hides, there are still some traces. It's just that our Shangshui Ying clan has no enmity with the Yu New Palace, so we don't want to talk about it. Then why didn't you tell me before? Uncle Fu said with a smile, "Young master, you have the same temper as that young master Lu. Even if the old ancestor told you about it, would you listen to him?" Chapter 772. The Yu New Palace was silent. Everyone had a strange look on their faces. There was definitely a problem with the sword welcoming assembly, but they didn't know which side was the problem. Lin Fengya and Yan Fian were also dumbfounded. This was a scene that they had never imagined would happen. Others might not know the origin of the heavenly sword spirit, but they all knew. In the past, when the ancestors of the Yu New Palace brought the heavenly sword spirit out from the Kunlun devil cult, they had already reached an agreement. Every 100 years, the sword spirit would also protect them for 100 years. In 500 years, the Yu New Palace had already offered sacrifices 5 times. But this time, there was a problem. The 9-tailed celestial fox was in existence at the heaven and earth mystic opening realm at its peak. Even if it was only a remnant soul now, as long as it devoured enough essence, qi and spirit, it could even rival a true fire spirit refinement realm existence. Lu Fengxian was only at the unity of heaven and man realm. Why was there a problem now? No one could answer their questions. At this moment, the demonic qi and blood color in Lu Fengxian's eyes faded, leaving behind only confusion and sorrow. Why? Yan Fian bit her lips and didn't speak. She couldn't say anything now. Those who understood the current situation naturally understood it. For example, Ying Bailu. But those who didn't understand could see that something was wrong, but they were still in the dark. The Yu New Palace was a righteous sect. Their trump card actually came from the Kunlun devil cult. This was something that would affect their reputation. And previously, the Yu New Palace sacrificed their own disciples. This was actually not a big deal. They did it willingly. Other than affecting their own disciples, no one else would meddle in other people's business. But this time, the Yu New Palace schemed to use Lu Fengxian. So in this situation, Yan Fian couldn't say anything. Lu Fengxian laughed bitterly and shook his head. "I understand. In your heart, no one is more important than the sect, including yourself. I don't want to pursue this matter anymore. But from now on, you and I are strangers." Although Lu Fengxian had already given up on Yan Fian, he still couldn't bear to kill Yan Fian. However, right at this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly stood up and said faintly, "Brother Lu, there are some things that can't be resolved with just a word. This is the way of the world. You don't bully others, but others think you're easy to bully and want to bully you." Seeing Chu Xiu get up, Lu Fengxian sighed and said, "Brother Chu, forget it." Chu Xiu wanted to stand up for him. Lu Fengxian knew that Chu Xiu was doing this for his own good. But in the current situation, even if Lu Fengxian didn't want to kill Yan Fian, he wouldn't let Chu Xiu do it either. Because this time was very sensitive to Chu Xiu himself. At this time, the righteous and demonic Dao war had just ended. Regardless if it was the righteous or demonic Dao, they were all very low-key. So the correct approach for Chu Xiu should be to recuperate in a low-key manner, and not like now, making a move and stirring up trouble again. Attracting attention like this was actually not a good thing for Chu Xiu. In a situation that didn't involve him, Lu Fengxian could still see things quite clearly. Chu Xiu held the demonic dance in his hand and walked out step by step, saying coldly, "Forget it? This matter won't be so easily forgotten. Brother Lu, this isn't just your matter. The Yu New Palace schemed against my, Chu Xiu's, good friend. Did you think about my attitude? Don't worry, I won't kill Yan Fian, but I still want the Yu Nu Palace to pay the price. Lin Fengya and Yan Fian's expressions changed at the same time. Chu Xiao. What are you trying to do? Chu Xiao said indifferently. What am I trying to do? Yan Fian. Do you remember that I warned you last time to behave yourself? But now it looks like you treated my warning like a fart. There will be karma in the future. Some mistakes you have to bear the price. Didn't your Yu Nu Palace want to rely on that bastard to protect your Yu Nu Palace for the next 100 years? Fine, I'll kill this bastard and make your Yu Nu Palace lose this trump card. At this time, the nine-tailed celestial fox, who had a face full of fear and didn't know whether Lu Wenho was still alive or not, had a dumbfounded look in her eyes. What did it have to do with him? She only made a deal with the Yu Nu Palace's ancestor. Who the other party sacrificed, she really didn't know at all before. Why did she become the target now instead? Boundless demonic chi lingered on the heavenly demon dance. That ferocious might was several times stronger than before. Slashing down, Chu Xiao went straight for the nine-tailed celestial fox. The entire hall was tainted by that horrifying demonic chi, turning incomparably cold. The nine-tailed celestial fox let out a furious roar. Do you really think I'm a sick cat if the celestial fox doesn't show its might? In ancient times, the nine-tailed celestial fox was definitely a peak existence among the ferocious beasts. It could rival the heaven and earth mystic opening realm supreme powerhouses of the human race. It was a pity that ferocious beasts had limits. No matter how strong a race's ferocious beast was, there was also a limit. But human martial artists didn't have a limit. So in ancient times, when it saw a powerhouse of Lu Wenho's level, it would practically hide. In the end, it had managed to escape the ancient calamity and had just woken up. It wanted to eat a few people to fill its empty stomach, but it had kicked an iron plate. Its body was directly taken by the Red Lotus demon Venerable, and its remnant soul was sealed as a pet. It was fine if these powerhouses didn't take it seriously. In the past, it could kill a whole bunch of people with a sweep of its tail at a level like Chu Xiao. In the end, the nine-tailed celestial fox actually dared to shout and kill in front of it. At this moment, the nine-tailed celestial fox felt that its dignity had been humiliated. Although the nine-tailed celestial fox was only left with a remnant soul and was in its weakest state because it hadn't devoured Lu Fengxian's essence, qi, and spirit, it still had the strength to fight. The nine-fox tail swelled up, and a ferocious aura suddenly erupted, wrapping around Chu Xiao. Everyone present had already retreated to the side when they saw that something was wrong. At this moment, even an idiot could tell that this nine-tailed celestial fox didn't seem to be a sword soul. Although the legendary long swords that could condense a sword soul had different shapes, at least one thing was certain. When it attacked, sword chi would definitely scatter in all directions. However, when the nine-tailed celestial fox attacked, it didn't seem like a sword soul at all. The heavenly demon dance, which carried an endless evil aura, suddenly slashed down and cut off the nine tails. At the same time, a powerful devouring force suddenly came from the heavenly demon dance, constantly devouring the nine-tailed celestial fox's power. There was a murderous intent in the nine-tailed celestial fox's scarlet eyes. It roared angrily, and its nine tails suddenly swelled up, even filling the entire hall. When Chu Xiao cut off one wave, another wave immediately grew out and smashed down. It even shook Chu Xiao's arm, which was holding the saber, to the point that it was trembling. Chu Xiao raised his eyebrows gently. To be honest, he had really underestimated this beast. This thing only had a remnant soul left, and it didn't even have a physical body. In the end, it still had such powerful power. It was indeed a powerful beast that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the heaven and earth mysterious realm powerhouses when it was alive. Just look at the current Lu Jianghe. Even though his remnant soul had been sealed, Lu Jianghe was unable to unleash even the slightest bit of his strength. All he could do was play some illusions inside the blood soul bead. At this moment, seeing Chu Xiao attack, Lin Fengya's expression also changed, and she shouted sternly, "Chu Xiao! You dare touch my Yu Nu Palace's sword soul? You're courting death." Chu Xiao sneered, "Stop pretending, sword soul? Just a beast that was once a pet of the Kunlun devil cult in the past. I said before, you have to pay the price for what you did. Today, I will definitely kill this beast." Lin Fengya gritted her teeth, and regardless of her injuries, she directly held her sword and attacked Chu Xiao. The nine-tailed celestial fox was their Yu Nu Palace's trump card. It could be said that without the nine-tailed celestial fox's protection, all these years, whenever the Yu Palace encountered decline or powerful enemies, they practically relied on the nine-tailed celestial fox's power to stop them. Therefore, in the entire Yu Palace, Yan Fian and the palace lord could die, but nothing could happen to the nine-tailed celestial fox. Open the formation. Following Lin Fengya's angry shout, the entire Yu Palace's formation began to operate. In fact, the Yu Palace's sect-protecting formation wasn't very strong. All these years, the Yu Palace had never produced a martial artist with any attainments in formations. Therefore, even this sect-protecting formation was set up by the Yu Palace's ancestor with the help of other formation masters in the past. But at this time, being able to use a bit of strength was a bit of strength. Lin Fengya also didn't have any other trump cards. But at this moment, Wuxia sneered and silently formed a seal with both hands. As the formation lit up, countless sharp sword chi swept towards Lin Fengya and the people of the Yu Palace. Caught off guard, Lin Fengya's body was directly attacked by a few sword chi, which worsened her injuries that hadn't fully recovered yet. She immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. It wasn't that Lin Fengya was too weak, but that she really didn't expect that her own formation would actually change direction and attack her. In the past, Wuxia was the inept military advisor who gave advice and suggestions to Marquis LV1 Ho. Although he ultimately couldn't stop Marquis LV1 Ho from enraging the masses and died, he had already been scheming against the martial artists of the large sect since ancient times. The people of the Yu Palace were still too inexperienced to play tricks with him. Taking advantage of the moment when Lin Fengya and the others were obstructed by the formation, Chu Xiu's demonic saber swept out and his saber force instantly rose to a peak. As the saber slashed down, the saber force surged and the saber force surged. It was like a tsunami tearing the heavens and splitting the earth, drowning and devouring all things. Among the 7 limits, the sea-breaking saber was originally a peerless saber strike. In addition, after Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance had been recast, it had already stepped into the ranks of divine weapons. It also had the characteristic of devouring all things, which overlapped with a portion of the sea-breaking saber intent. The two complemented each other and erupted with even greater power than before. As the saber slashed down, the nine-tailed celestial fox's 9 tails instantly ruptured. This time, they didn't grow back. Instead, it let out a mournful howl. Chapter 773. Lin Fengya had a look of disbelief on her face as she watched Chu Xiu's sea-splitting saber strike heavily injure the 9-tailed celestial fox. That was the trump card of the Yu Palace, but it had been heavily injured by Chu Xiu. What kind of trump card was that? Was there a problem with the 9-tailed celestial fox, or was Chu Xiu too strong, so strong that it was beyond her imagination? In reality, ever since the great battle on Floating Jade Mountain, Lin Fengya had been recuperating in the Yu Palace. It had been a long time since she stepped out of the Jianghu. Chu Xiu was an influential figure in the Jianghu, but to Lin Fengya, she had only heard about him through hearsay. As for who Chu Xiu had killed and how he had slain Jin Hua and the other spirit refinement realm experts, she had always heard about it. Therefore, she did not have a direct impression of Chu Xiu's strength. Until now she had seen it. It was so strong that it made people tremble. At this moment, Lin Fengya and Yan Fian both felt a trace of regret. They didn't regret scheming against Lu Fengxian. They only regretted being too careless. They didn't account for the relationship between Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. They also didn't account for Chu Xiu's strength to be this strong. Indeed, LV Fengxian's friends were everywhere in the world. This was true. No one who befriended LV Fengxian had ever said anything bad about him. Even people like Ying Bailu, who didn't have much of a relationship with Lu Fengxian and could only be considered acquaintances, were the same. Even though Lu Fengxian had stolen the person he loved, for some reason, Ying Bailu only felt disappointment and sadness. He didn't feel any hatred in his heart. Yan Fian and Lin Fengya knew this, but they judged him by their own standards. They thought that this kind of friendship was just a dream. It was just a little better than fair-weather friends. When Lu Fengxian's essence, qi, and spirit were devoured and her cultivation was crippled, who would be willing to stand up for him since they weren't from the same sect or family? Jianghu was just that realistic, so Lin Fengya and Yan Fian did not even consider that someone would stand up for Lu Fengxian, who was all alone. Even though Chu Xiu had warned Yan Fian before, she did not take it to heart. But now they were filled with regret. If they didn't plot against Lu Fengxian, they would at most let the sword spirit go into hibernation, and their Yu Palace would think of other methods. In the end, after scheming against Lu Fengxian, their Yu Palace's final life-saving trump card was gone. At this time, Yan Fian was resisting the sword formation while pleading to Lu Fengxian. "Fengxian, help me, make Chu Xiu stop. This matter is our Yu Palace's fault. After this, I can promise you anything you want. Whatever Chu Xiu wants, our Yu Palace will also agree. I just hope that you can make him stop." But at this time, Lu Fengxian looked at Yan Fian as if she was a stranger. He shook his head and said, "Miss Yan, please call me Lu Fengxian. Also, Brother Chu is standing up for me now. If I make him stop, wouldn't I be letting down Brother Chu's kind intentions? Some things are wrong. I can trust a person, but I won't forgive a person. If you had told me the truth, even if I had to beg Brother Chu or Brother Xia, I would definitely have thought of a way to help your Yu Palace get through this crisis. But now it's too late." Lu Fengxian was passionate, but he wasn't an idiot. From the moment he stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, he had already cut off all relations with Yan Fian. The two of them were completely strangers. Even if Yan Fian really wanted to risk her life and threaten Chu Xiu, Lu Fengxian would even have the intention to kill her. Yan Fian made a wrong choice. She neglected Lu Fengxian's greatest value, which was Lu Fengxian's true connections. It was true that Chu Xiu hated the Yu Palace, and Xie Xiao Lu had no relationship with the Yu Palace, but as long as Lu Fengxian asked, they were willing to sell Lu Fengxian a favor. Whether it was Chu Xiu's current forces or the faraway West Chu's World Alliance, it was too easy to protect the Yu Palace. It was a pity that Yan Fian, or the Yu Palace, bought the casket and returned the pearls, and did such a stupid thing. And at this time, the remnant soul of the nine-tailed celestial fox, which had been severely injured by Chu Xiu's sea-breaker saber, had already gone mad. Its eyes were crimson red, and the aura around it was extremely violent. At the location of its 9 tails that had been cut off, 9 streams of mental energy seemed to have solidified, extending and extending endlessly. In the end, it actually turned into a large net that covered the sky and covered the earth, enveloping Chu Xiu. The 9-tailed celestial fox was most proficient in mental energy attacks. However, it was currently in the state of a remnant soul. Previously, it had used its own power to guide the power of heaven and earth to attack, which consumed very little of its remnant soul. But now, it had already begun to consume the power source of its remnant soul. One could imagine that this 9-tailed celestial fox was already starting to fight with its life on the line. Sheathing the saber and forming a seal, the soul-extinguishing arrow was unleashed. The whistling mental energy exploded, but the consecutive arrows were actually unable to completely penetrate the large net of mental energy. At this time, Lu Jiang said casually, "Eh?" It turned out to be that kid Nangong Wuming's 9 forms of soul assimilation. "You actually know the techniques of the demon heart hall." Chu Xiu ignored Lu Jiang, but at this time, Lu Jiang chuckled and said, "Kid, why don't we make a deal? You lure this beast into an illusion, then use your mental energy to connect to the blood soul bead and pull me into the illusion as well. I'll help you subdue this evil beast. It's simple and saves time. How about this?" Chu Xiu said lightly. "Do you think I'm an idiot, or do you think I can't kill this beast? Since I can kill such a powerful remnant soul myself, why should I let you swallow it to restore your strength?" The soul-extinguishing arrow could not penetrate this large net, but Chu Xiu had already used the combination of the extinguishing heaven and earth soul transfer technique and the 9 forms of soul assimilation to the extreme, completely using his mental energy to fight the 9-tailed celestial fox head-on. This beast's strength was indeed not simple. It was already weakened to this state, but it still had such strength. But for Chu Xiu, dealing with it was only a matter of time. The longer it took, the weaker the 9-tailed celestial fox's strength would be. Seeing that Chu Xiu was getting more and more ruthless, Lu Jiang hurriedly said, all right, I owe you. I'll give you something to exchange for it. How about it? You're mine now. What are you going to give me in exchange?" Lu Jiang gritted his teeth and said, "My holy church's secret place with hidden treasures, do you want to exchange? In the past, my holy church's branches were spread all over the Jianghu. Naturally, there were many secret places. Not all of them were thrown on Kunlun Mountain. The things that I personally buried back then, other than me, no one else knows. You also don't have to worry that I'll threaten you after swallowing that remnant soul. The blood soul bead is in your hands. That's like a prison. Unless you take the initiative to break the cage and let me out, letting me obtain the body, otherwise, a remnant soul of mine won't be able to threaten you. Chu Xiu was actually waiting for Lu Jianghe to say this. Although he had squeezed out the blood divine demonic technique from Lu Jianghe, he also knew that Lu Jianghe must still have many secrets or good things. If he didn't squeeze him dry and maximize his remaining value, wouldn't he be at a loss? So when he heard Lu Jianghe say this, Chu Xiu's figure immediately moved forward. The power of his primordial spirit was exerted to the maximum, and completely integrated with the spiritual power net formed by the nine-tailed celestial fox. He took the initiative to pull the remnant soul into his own spiritual world. The nine-tailed celestial fox was very puzzled by Chu Xiu's actions. The ferocious beasts of its lineage were powerful to begin with, but they were most proficient in mental strength. However, Chu Xiu had taken the initiative to pull it into the mental world, using its weak point to attack its strong point. Wasn't this courting death? In the misty spiritual world, the nine-tailed celestial fox's huge body seemed to cover the sky. Its 9 tails that had been cut off by Chu Xiu had already recovered, and it smiled at Chu Xiu ferociously. However, at this moment, a middle-aged man appeared beside Chu Xiu. Blood danced around him as he smiled sinisterly at the 9-tailed celestial fox. Little thing, it's been a long time since we last met. Do you still recognize me? The moment it saw Lu Jianghe, the 9-tailed celestial fox's smile gradually disappeared, and a look of horror appeared in its eyes. It was born in ancient times, and in order to avoid the great ancient calamity, it used a secret method to sleep underground. It could be said that even if it didn't really live for 10,000 years, it was at least an existence that had lived for thousands of years. In all these years, the thing it didn't want to recall the most was the days when it was a pet in the Kunlun devil cult, being watched and played by everyone. Except for the extremely mysterious cult leader, it had seen almost everyone else. And among these people, Lu Jianghe was the most excessive. The others were at most watching something new. After all, the 9-tailed celestial fox had become extinct during the great ancient calamity. It was estimated that there was only one left in the world. At that time, although the Kunlun devil cult had dominated the entire pugilistic world, they had not seen a powerful ferocious beast comparable to the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. However, these people only watched and never took action. Only Lu Jianghe used all kinds of means to play with it all day long. He even said that he was studying ferocious beasts and developing new techniques. It was a time that was unbearable to recall. So now, when the 9-tailed celestial fox saw Lu Jianghe, it still felt a little afraid. However, after the fear, the 9-tailed celestial fox suddenly remembered why it should be afraid. The Kunlun devil cult had been destroyed for hundreds of years, and those terrifying people were already dead. Even if this guy in front of it had become a remnant soul like it, what did it have to be afraid of? So the 9-tailed celestial fox roared angrily, and the 9 tails behind it expanded, as if they covered the sky and the sun, and its momentum was monstrous. Chu Xiu glanced at Lu Jianghe and said, "Can you do it or not? You can easily exhaust it outside, but you have to bring this beast here and add to the trouble." Lu Jianghe sneered and said, "Don't worry, I never do things that I am not confident of." As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Jianghe directly formed a seal with both hands. There was no special aura, but at this time, on the head of the 9-tailed celestial fox, a red lotus bloomed. The red lotus was as red as blood, and as it bloomed, it was constantly weakening the power of the 9-tailed celestial fox. When the red lotus bloomed completely, the power of the 9-tailed celestial fox had been suppressed to the point of almost nothingness. Its entire body became the size of a husky, and it looked quite cute. Chapter 774. In the past, the strength of the Kunlun devil cult was far beyond many people's expectations. If it wasn't for the fact that the old celestial master was born in that era, others wouldn't be able to understand the true strength of the Kunlun devil cult just by hearsay. They were both at the mysterious heaven and earth realm, but Yi Xiaonan was able to defeat both Su Ci and the Ying family's patriarch, Ying Si, at the same time. This proved that no matter what realm a martial artist reached, there was a huge gap. In the past, the Kunlun devil cult was the same. The 4 demon lords were definitely experts in the mysterious heaven and earth realm. The Red Lotus Demon Lord had easily captured the nine-tailed celestial fox and locked it up like a pet. Of course he had done something. The Red Lotus Demon Lord had done something to the nine-tailed celestial fox's soul remnant to prevent it from running around. That's right, the Red Lotus Demon Lord wasn't even worried that it would escape. He was only worried that it would run around. Other than the Red Lotus Demon Lord himself, only Lu Jiang he knew about this. Of course, this didn't mean that Lu Jiang he was close to the Red Lotus Demon Lord. It was only because Lu Jiang he wanted to study the nine-tailed celestial fox, so he asked the Red Lotus Demon Lord for it. He didn't expect it to come in handy now. Lu Jiang he waved his hand, and the Red Lotus Demon Lord completely wrapped the nine-tailed celestial fox. It shrank to the size of a palm and returned to Lu Jiang he's hand. Done! Chu Xiao narrowed his eyes. The talkative fake demon lord had been hiding something from him. He had always known about this trick, but he had never said it. Even if the nine-tailed celestial fox was stronger than it was now, strong enough to kill Chu Xiao, Lu Jiang he wouldn't have said it. Chu Xiao's blood soul bead wouldn't break even if he died. If he fell into someone else's hands, he might be able to trick them into letting him out. So why did he say it? Of course, Chu Xiao did not pursue Lu Jiang he's petty thoughts. This kind of thing was very normal. On the contrary, with Lu Jiang he's character, it would be strange if he always behaved himself. After coming out of the spiritual world, the nine-tailed celestial fox's aura had completely dissipated. Even the celestial sword, which was the vessel, had lost its luster. This thing was originally used as a container to hold the nine-tailed celestial fox. Now that the thing inside was gone, it naturally lost its value. Meanwhile, in the outside world, Lin Fengya stared blankly at all of this. Her eyes were still filled with disbelief. The sword soul of their Yu Nu palace was gone just like that? At this moment, Lin Fengya even felt that she was the Yu Nu palace's sinner. The Yu Nu palace would definitely decline in her generation. Whether it was Lin Fengya or the entire Yu Nu palace, they had already reached a dead end. The Yu Nu palace had a long history, but in reality, the ancestor of the Yu Nu palace, the Yu Nu, was not their true ancestor. This was because the Yu Nu had never intended to accept disciples. According to the legends, the Yu Nu sword technique was a gift from heaven. She only used a bamboo pole to defeat numerous experts in the pugilistic world. However, the true Yu Nu sword technique was not passed down by the Yu Nu. Instead, she had casually given a few pointers to a little girl who was being bullied and left. That little girl was the true ancestor of the Yu Nu palace. Therefore, from the beginning, the Yu Nu sword technique of the Yu Nu palace was incomplete. At the same time, it was utilitarian. It was far inferior to the true Yu Nu sword technique of the Yu Nu palace. Only a few exceptional geniuses could comprehend the true essence of the Yu Nu sword technique from these incomplete sword techniques. Therefore, the Yu Nu palace's early days were actually like this. Strength was all up to fate. However, at some point in time, the Yu Nu palace gradually became utilitarian. They were no longer willing to wait for a good disciple to appear. Instead, they wanted to be like the other sects and have stable strength. The existence of the nine-tailed celestial fox was a mistake of the Yu Nu palace. The Yu Nu palace's trump card was actually their Yu Nu sword technique. As long as they put effort into it, they would have everything. In the end, the Yu Nu palace placed everything on external objects. They became less and less interested in the Yu Nu sword technique. The Yu Nu palace's current state was their own fault. Of course, Lin Fengya would not admit to these things. Even if it was her fault, in her heart, Chu Xiao had become the culprit who destroyed the Yu Nu palace's trump card. Chu Xiao, the Yu Nu palace will not rest until you are dead. Lin Fengya roared angrily. Sword chi swirled around her, and there were even blood-colored shadows coiling around her blade. When the sword slashed out, the biting sharpness instantly tore the formation apart. It went straight for Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao couldn't help but sneer when he saw that Lin Fengya was actually burning her essence blood to kill him. The Yu Nu palace's Yu Nu sword technique was a sword bestowed by the heavens. The weaker one's mental state was, the closer they were to the will of heaven and earth. Only then would they be able to unleash their greatest power. At this moment, Lin Fengya's mental state was in a mess. All that was left was hatred and killing. The sword intent she used was completely different from the Yu Nu sword technique. It would be strange if she could unleash its true power. Of course, even if she was at her peak, she would not be Chu Xiao's match. There was no difference. The heavenly demon dance slashed down with dense demonic chi. There were faint wails of hungry ghosts within it. It devoured the sword chi. With a boom, it shattered Lin Fengya's sword and even sent her flying. She coughed up a mouthful of blood. Looking at Lin Fengya, Chu Xiu's eyes were also filled with killing intent. At this moment, he was indeed only helping LV Fengxian vent her anger. Doing this much was actually already enough. However, Chu Xiu's personality was like this. Either he didn't do it, or he did it to the extreme. He destroyed the Yu Nu Palace's sword soul, causing them to lose their trump card. It was certain that they would not be able to recover from this setback. However, it was not enough. Chu Xiu even wanted to destroy the Yu Nu Palace. Anyway, he had already offended the Yu Nu Palace. If he did not make a move now, it would be troublesome to leave behind an enemy who secretly hated him. In for a penny, in for a pound. He would destroy the Yu Nu Palace. Of course, Chu Xiu could not do it himself. After all, there was still Yan Fian. Chu Xiu also had to consider Lu Fengxian's feelings. However, Yan Fian could not be killed. Chu Xiu had no qualms about killing Lin Fengya. Although Chu Xiu rarely killed women, when he really wanted to kill someone, there was no difference between men and women in his eyes. Demonic chi lingered on the heavenly demon dance as it slashed towards Lin Fengya. The demonic chi blade engulfed everything. It looked like this blade was about to behead Lin Fengya. However, at this moment, a long sword shining with pure yang energy suddenly appeared in front of Lin Fengya. The sword split into three and the three sword lights merged into one, blocking Chu Xiu's blade. However, the pure yang energy also dissipated. The old Taoist priest from the pure yang Dao sect snorted coldly and said, "Chu Xiu, don't think that you can behave atrociously as you wish just because the demonic Dao managed to escape the calamity in this war between the righteous and demonic Dao. It's not like there's no one in the righteous Dao sect." There were too many things involved in the Yu Nu Palace incident. The old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect was not an idiot. He could naturally see that something was wrong. If it was someone else, the old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect would definitely not intervene. However, the person who appeared in front of him was Chu Xiu. Chunyang Dao sect had a great enmity with Chu Xiu. He had no reason to not make a move. Moreover, the Yu Nu Palace belonged to the righteous Dao sect, while Chu Xiu belonged to the demonic Dao sect. There were so many people here today, but they allowed Chu Xiu, a fellow from the demonic Dao, to be so arrogant. It was simply preposterous. Sun Qili and Sun Qifan of the Sun clan looked at each other and walked out as well. Sun Qili coughed and said, "Chu Xiu, where it is possible to forgive, one should forgive. There are so many people here. Do you really want to destroy the Yu Nu Palace?" The people from the Jiangdong Sun clan had always been low-key and slick. They would not be like the old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect who stood out to protect Lin Fengya. However, it was not a problem for them to exert some pressure on Chu Xiu from the back. Let people off when possible? The only thing that I, Chu Xiu, can spare is a dead person. As soon as he finished speaking, the spirit power condensed in Chu Xiu's hand. The soul-destroying arrows shot out consecutively towards the old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect. Today, he was determined to kill Lin Fengya. It was a joke if they thought they could stop him with just a few stray chickens and stray dogs. If Chu Xiu was really angered, he would kill the old Taoist as well. After all, he had killed more than one or two Chunyang Dao sect martial artists. The old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect snorted coldly. Under his control, the three Dao swords formed the three-talent sword formation. In an instant, pure yang energy flourished and illuminated the entire hall in a golden color. The soul-extinguishing arrow was a spiritual attack, but the three great sword array was quite miraculous. Under the attack of the pure yang gang qi, the power of the soul-extinguishing arrow was reduced by 90%. The old Taoist priest could easily withstand the remaining power. Chu Xiu took a step forward and the demonic flames around him surged into the sky. The sea-breaking saber slashed down. The saber aura that could devour everything seemed to drown the entire hall. It was sharp and turbulent. Before the saber aura arrived, the saber intent had already sent chills down everyone's spine. This could be said to be the ultimate power of the saber slash down. The three-talent sword formation shattered with a loud bang. The old Taoist vomited blood and retreated. Sun Xiaofan and Sun Qili formed a fist seal and instantly condensed cold ice energy into a shield. They placed it in front of the old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect to help him block the remaining erosion of the saber intent. With a loud bang, the ice shield shattered. The endless chill spread towards Chu Xiao as if it wanted to freeze the heaven and earth essence Qi. Chu Xiao took a step forward expressionlessly and executed the great sun-changing technique. The demonic aura dissipated and only the scorching Buddha's light covered the sky. Vairocana's shadow hovered behind Chu Xiao. His hand formed the colorless sealing palm seal and instantly strangled everything. Palm strike after palm strike landed. The crushing power caused the Sun brothers to retreat step by step. Their expressions changed drastically. Chu Xiao's power was so strong that it was unreasonable. After retreating more than 100 feet, they suddenly heard a whistling sound. Their expressions changed abruptly. However, before they could react, the soul-destroying arrows had already penetrated Lin Fengya's brain. Her face instantly turned pale. In the blink of an eye, she lost all signs of life. She was killed on the spot by Chu Xiao. Chapter 775. Lin Fengya's death caused the entire Yu Palace to fall into silence. Almost everyone was dumbfounded, and some people didn't even have time to react. The Yu Palace was a member of the 5 major sword sects and a major righteous Dao sect. There were many righteous Dao martial artists who were invited to participate in the sword welcoming conference, and these people didn't really think of watching from the sidelines. Previously, they were still thinking of letting the old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect and the Sun brothers exhaust Chu Xiao first. Then, at the critical moment, they would save Lin Fengya and force Chu Xiao to not dare to fight to the death. That way, the matter would be resolved perfectly. After all, 99% of the people here were from righteous Dao sections. Letting a guy like Chu Xiao, who had just made a name for himself in the righteous Dao war, be so presumptuous here would not look good on their faces. However, who would have thought that Chu Xiao would act so quickly that it was beyond their imagination? Before they could prepare to make a move, Lin Fengya had already been beheaded. Moreover, when Chu Xiao fought 1 against 3, his power was simply unstoppable. If 1 or 2 ordinary people went up, they would simply be courting death. So now, Chu Xiao was standing in the main hall of the Yu Palace, a righteous Dao sect, killing wantonly, but not a single person stood up. The entire place was incomparably quiet. After the old Taoist from the Chunyang Dao sect was injured, he didn't make another move. It was true that he wanted to kill the devil, Chu Xiao, but Lin Fengya was already dead, and the others didn't make a move. If he went up alone, it would be no different from courting death. The Sun brothers even silently retreated to the side. At the same time, they glared fiercely at Sun Zhongming, meaning to not find trouble with Chu Xiao in the future. Otherwise, the consequences would be unpredictable. Chu Xiao's eyes narrowed as he swept his gaze over everyone present. His imposing aura caused everyone present to be unable to meet his gaze. Sensing that something was wrong with the atmosphere, Fang Qishao poked Luo Feiheng and whispered, "Hey, don't tell me that Chu Xiao is addicted to killing and wants to kill everyone here?" To be honest, although there were many martial artists who came to participate in the sword welcoming meet, apart from Chu Xiao, there was no one from the righteous sects who were famous in the Jianghu and even ranked on the Fengyun list. The Yu Palace had already been weakened to such a state. Considering that the other party was a righteous sect, one of the 5 great sword sects, with an invitation from the Yu Palace, all the great sects would give face to the Yu Palace. As long as they had free martial artists, they would send them to participate in the sword welcoming assembly. Therefore, almost all the warriors who came to participate in the sword welcoming assembly had a certain status and strength in the sect, but they were not famous. If Chu Xiao really wanted to get rid of all of them, with the help of the formation that Shui Wuxiang had tampered with, it was really not a difficult task. On the other side, Luo Feiheng shrugged and said, "Who knows? Anyway, I know that guy could really do such a thing." But fortunately, Chu Xiao was not that crazy. With so many martial arts masters, if they were forced into a corner, they would put aside all their prejudices and attack together, which could really bring trouble to Chu Xiao. Most importantly, this was Eastern Qi, and this time, 90% of the martial artists who came to participate in the sword welcoming assembly were from Eastern Qi. Once Chu Xiao let one of them escape, the other party would spread the news that Chu Xiao had killed all the martial artists who came to participate in the sword welcoming assembly. Before Chu Xiu returned to northern Yen, he would be endlessly hunted. Probably even the moon-worshipping cult did not have such a high profile, coming here to cause trouble right after the righteous and demonic path war, and making such a big scene. The disciples of the Yu Palace looked at Chu Xiu with a face full of hatred, but no one dared to come forward to die. Their palace lord was killed by Chu Xiu, so what was the use of them coming forward? At this time, Yan Fian had a dull look on her face, as if she still could not believe what had happened in front of her. You should be glad that I am a person who has tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex, and I don't kill women. But what the Yu Palace has done is a little too much, so let the people of the pugilistic world judge it. Don't worry, the details of the Yu Palace will spread throughout the pugilistic world by the next day. I have a good relationship with the vice leader of the wind-sweeping building, Qi Yuanli, so I believe he will be very happy to spread such good gossip. Chu Xiu said this slowly, but Yan Fian suddenly trembled. She looked at Chu Xiu with endless fear in her eyes and said hatefully, "Chu Xiu, you're ruthless." Chu Xiu did not kill them now, but he did not leave the Yu Palace a way out. Lin Fengya was dead, and the Yu Palace's trump card, the sword spirit, was also gone. Right now, the Yu Palace could be said to be at its weakest. Therefore, the Yu Palace's only hope was their reputation as one of the 5 great sword sects, as well as the connections they had accumulated as a righteous sect. They were all women, and if they came to ask for help, there would probably be a lot of people who would agree to help them. But now, Chu Xiu had completely extinguished this hope of theirs. Chu Xiu had the wind-sweeping building spread all this to destroy their reputation. At that time, no one would be willing to help a Yu Palace with a bad reputation. Moreover, over the years, the Yu Palace had offended many people. Now that those people knew that the Yu Palace's trump card had been completely crippled, and their reputation was also bad, even if they targeted the Yu Palace, no one would meddle. How could those people let the Yu Palace off? Therefore, Yan Fian could imagine what the Yu Palace would face next. It would only delay the destruction of the Yu Palace. Yan Fian looked at Lu Fengxian in despair. Right now, the only person who could save the Yu Palace and make Chu Xiu stop was Lu Fengxian. Chu Xiu wanted to vent for Lu Fengxian, but the Yu Palace was already crippled, and Lin Fengya was already dead. Could it be that he would only be satisfied when the Yu Palace was destroyed? But Lu Fengxian only sighed softly and stood up. Under Yan Fian's expectant gaze, he said to Chu Xiu, "Brother Chu, let's go." Chu Xiu nodded, waved his hand, and led everyone away with large strides. In the entire area, no one dared to stop them, and no one dared to say a word. Seeing Yan Fian's gaze turn from expectant to despair, Feng Qishao couldn't help but shake his head. "You're too smart for your own good. Why bother?" Feng Qishao and Yan Fian could actually be considered old acquaintances. Both of them were outstanding figures of the younger generation of the 5 great sword sects, and were both groomed as heirs. Therefore, the two of them had already known each other many years ago. In the past, Sword King City even wanted to matchmake Feng Qishao and Yan Fian, but due to the rules of the Yu Palace, this matter was quickly dropped. Moreover, at that time, Feng Qishao discovered that Yan Fian was not a woman who was easy to deal with. She was too scheming. In the end, the dignified fairy Cloud's word had fallen to such a state. Even the Yu Palace didn't know when it would be destroyed. Of course, all of this could only be said to be Yan Fian's fault. The Yu Palace only had itself to blame. He didn't have the slightest intention to speak up for the Yu Palace. After walking out of the Yu Palace, Lu Fengxian bowed deeply to Chu Xiu. "Brother Chu, thank you very much this time." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "If we say thanks to each other, it would be too formal. Back then, when I was besieged by so many people from the Righteous Tao Alliance, you also helped me without thinking." Lu Fengxian smiled bitterly. "It's not the same. Back then, even without me, Brother Chu, you could still get through the crisis. But this time without Brother Chu, I'm afraid I would be miserable." Don't look at how Lu Fengxian stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm on the spot. In fact, without Chu Xiu, Lu Fengxian's situation would be equally dangerous. Having just stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, Lu Fengxian was actually in the most dangerous stage. Without seclusion to sort out her power, Lu Fengxian couldn't control the martial Dao true core in her body at all. So at that time, if Lin Fengya had made up her mind and completely shed all pretense of cordiality, and joined forces with the nine-tailed celestial fox to forcefully devour Lu Fengxian's essence, qi, and spirit, he also couldn't resist. At the side, Luo Feiheng couldn't help but say, "I say, Brother Lu, it's not that I want to criticize you, but since you knew the consequences would be terrible, why did you trust that woman so easily? Even if you were a little more cautious, this situation wouldn't have happened. Beautiful women are the best at lying. Brother Lu, you're not being lustful. You know it's a pit of fire, but you still jumped in. You want to see if it's hot or not." Lu Fengxian looked at Luo Feiheng and said very seriously, "You're also very beautiful, but would you lie to me? If someone told me that you wanted to harm me, I wouldn't believe them either. Whether there's fire in the pit of fire or not, you can only find out by jumping in. If you suspect someone you trust without knowing if there's fire in the pit of fire, then the fire in your heart will be extinguished, and it will make one's heart cold." Luo Feiheng was speechless and didn't know what to say. She slapped her head and waved her hand. Forget it, I can't persuade you anymore. To be honest, I've never seen someone as lucky as you to be able to live until now without being cheated to death. Brother Lu, you should really go and pray to the gods and bodhisattvas." At the side, Chu Xiu didn't mind. In the original plot, Lu Fengxian was cheated even more miserably. Now, Lu Fengxian was only schemed against by the Yu Palace. In the original plot, Lu Fengxian took the blame for Nie Donglu and was treated as the successor of the Kunlun devil cult. She was chased by the righteous sects for a long time. Of course, this situation was impossible to happen now. Nie Dongliu's grave would probably have fruits growing on it. Brother Lu, come back to the suppression martial hall with me for this period of time. Stabilize your realm first, said Chu Xiu. After stepping into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, one would need a period of closed-door cultivation to stabilize their realm. At this time, one would need a safe place, and Chu Xiu's suppression martial hall was very suitable. At the side, Feng Qishao interrupted. I want to go too. Brother Lu, you and Ing Bailu have cheated me badly. Both of you have stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm one after another. If I return to Sword King City now, I'll probably be cursed to death by those old men. Chu Xiu glanced at Feng Qishao. It doesn't matter if you die sooner or later. Even if you go back after breaking through to the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, you'll still be cursed. As the saying goes, the earlier you die, the earlier you reincarnate. The longer you drag it out, the more cursed you'll be when you return. As a person, be more open-minded. At least among the martial artists of your generation, there's still Li Feilian who hasn't stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. He'll be accompanying you. Chapter 776. Before Chu Xiu returned to Northern Yen, he made a trip to Wind Sweeping Tower. Since he said he was going to destroy the Yu Palace, he had to do it. Even if he didn't do it himself, Chu Xiu had to add fuel to the fire. The vice leader of Wind Sweeping Tower, three-eyed god Qi Yuanli, could be considered an old acquaintance of Chu Xiu. He had even watched Chu Xiu grow up. In the past, Chu Xiu was just an ordinary wandering cultivator. But now, Chu Xiu had grown into an existence that Qi Yuanli could look up to. So when he saw Chu Xiu again, Qi Yuanli couldn't help but sigh. Of course, Chu Xiu had a good impression of Qi Yuanli. This vice leader's personality was in line with Wind Sweeping Tower's position. Wind Sweeping Tower didn't participate in the disputes of the Jianghu. They were just a collector of information and a recorder of the history of the Jianghu. Selling information was just a way for Wind Sweeping Tower to make a living. If they did not sell information, there was no way Wind Sweeping Tower could afford to support such a large number of news agents in the world of martial artists. They also had a messaging matrix that was spread all over the world of martial artists, which allowed any news to spread through the entire world of martial artists within a day. But all of this was just a way to make a living. Wind Sweeping Tower wanted to be the witness of the prosperous Jianghu. They didn't want to miss any details. Official Chu, what information do you want to buy this time? But let me say this first. The current situation is sensitive. Some information about some big sections. Even if you want to buy it, I won't dare to sell it. Although Wind Sweeping Tower treated all customers equally, Qi Yuanli still felt a headache when he saw Chu Xiu at this time. Not long after the war between the righteous and demonic factions, Chu Xiu jumped out to cause trouble. He was so high profile that he didn't put anyone in his eyes. Qi Yuanli already knew what happened in the Yu Palace before Chu Xiu came. After all, wind-sweeping tower's information spread faster than Chu Xiu's legs. However, there were still some details that Qi Yuanli didn't know, so in his opinion, this time it was Chu Xiu who was stirring up trouble. Chu Xiu sat in front of Qi Yuanli and shook his head. Tower Lord Qi, there's no need to be nervous. I'm not here to buy information. I'm here to give you a piece of information. What news? The truth about the Yu Palace incident. Chu Xiu said word by word. Upon hearing Chu Xiu's words, Qi Yuanli immediately perked up. Oh, so there's something else going on? The Yu Palace's sword welcoming assembly was held once every 100 years. It wasn't some grand event of the Jianghu, and it didn't have any definite connection with other martial artists. Therefore, Wind-Sweeping Tower did not pay much attention to the entire sword welcoming assembly. Wind-Sweeping Tower had heard about what had happened in the Yu Palace from the other cultivators who had participated in the sword welcoming meet, so it wasn't comprehensive. After Chu Xiu told Qi Yuanli what had happened, Qi Yuanli couldn't help but sigh. To be honest, he didn't expect the Yu Palace to have such a secret. 500 years ago, many righteous sects had divided the Kunlun devil cult, and the good stuff had already been taken by those peak sections. Although the Yu Palace's strength was not bad, and the Yu Palace from 500 years ago was even stronger than it was now, and it had produced true fire spirit refinement realm experts, but compared to those peak sects, it was still lacking. Therefore, everyone thought that the good stuff didn't fall into the hands of the Yu Palace. Who would have thought that the Yu Palace would take a different path and find an ornamental object, with the remnant soul of an ancient fierce beast sealed within? One had to know that the remnant soul of a heaven and earth profound understanding realm fierce beast was a treasure that couldn't be replicated. It was definitely not inferior to other treasures. It could only be said that the Kunlun devil cult was too strong, to the point that they could treat treasures as playthings. Moreover, Qi Yuanli sighed in his heart at the Yu Palace's actions over the years. They had clearly gone astray. They pursued the power in front of them too much, and in the end, they neglected the sect's future. In the past 500 years, the Yu Palace had sacrificed 5 young elites that could be ranked on the Dragon and Tiger leaderboard. Although these young elites might not become great figures that could stir up the world in the future, they at least had the possibility. In the end, the Yu Palace sacrificed them, and this possibility was completely cut off. In this generation, the Yu Palace could be said to be extremely weak. In the end, they still did such a stupid thing and angered Chu Xiu. Now, the Yu Palace probably wouldn't have a next generation. Qi Yuanli collected all kinds of information in the world all day long, and he was very clear about Chu Xiu's plans. He immediately understood that Chu Xiu wanted to kill with a borrowed knife. Once the news about the Yu Palace spread, its reputation would be ruined. Those who had enmity with the Yu Palace, or even those who didn't have enmity with the Yu Palace, no one could guarantee what they would do. However, Qi Yuanli didn't resist this kind of thing. What Wind-Sweeping Tower wanted was information and the truth. As for what this information and the truth would bring, it wasn't something Wind-Sweeping Tower could control. Moreover, Wind-Sweeping Tower wasn't afraid of the Yu Palace coming to find trouble. To put it bluntly, with the current strength of the Yu Palace, they weren't even afraid of the anemophilia that specialized in intelligence. Qi Yuanli showed a tacit smile to Chu Xiu and said, "Official Chu's information is quite useful. Tomorrow, Wind-Sweeping Tower's headline will be the secret of the Yu Palace, as well as 3 Dragon and Tiger leaderboard elites stepping into the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm in a short few days. I reckon that this news will definitely shock the entire world." Feng Qishao said gloomily, "Tower Lord Qi, you're wrong. I haven't stepped into the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm." As Feng Qishao said that, he cursed inwardly. This Qi Yuanli's math isn't good, but his eyes aren't good either? Can't he tell that I'm not a Martial Dao Grandmaster? Qi Yuanli chuckled. Young Master Feng must be joking. I'm not the Tower Lord. I'm only the Vice Tower Lord. Also, I didn't calculate wrongly. Ying Bailu, Little Marquis Wan, and Li Feilian have all stepped into the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm in the past few days. Of course it's 3 of them. What did you say? Li Feilian has also become a Martial Dao Grandmaster? Feng Qishao's expression was no longer F** King a dog. It was simply F** King a dog. Qi Yuanli nodded and said, "It was yesterday's news." Li Feilian battled the Chunyang Dao Sect's martial Dao Grandmaster Huanyangzi in West Chu and killed him with 3 slashes, stepping into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. Feng Qi Xiao's expression was wooden. He could not even be bothered to say, F***ck, at this moment. At this moment, Feng Qi Xiao even felt that the entire world was against him. Chu Xiu was also slightly speechless by the side. To be honest, Feng Qi Xiao had actually gone further than Ying Bailu and Lu Fengxian. After so many years, who had seen Feng Qi Xiao fight to the death and unleash his full strength? However, breaking through to the martial Dao Grandmaster realm required time and opportunity. In the past, Feng Qi Xiao did not take such things seriously and was not in a hurry. In fact, he had even touched the threshold several times, but he felt that he did not accumulate enough, so he did not take that step. In the end, when he felt that he had accumulated enough and wanted to take that step, the bottleneck was even higher than before. After being surpassed by 3 people in a row, Feng Qi Xiao really did not want to return to Sword King City at this moment. He estimated that once he returned, he would not be able to leave until he stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. After leaving Wind Sweeping Building, Chu Xiu took Lu Fengxian back to Northern Yen. Feng Qi Xiao did not follow them and returned to Sword King City directly. Although Feng Qi Xiao said that he did not want to return to Sword King City, he still went back and took the initiative to go into closed-door cultivation. This time, Chu Xiu could see that Feng Qi Xiao's pride seemed to have been hurt. Even if Feng Qi Xiao did not care much about being surpassed by the people behind him as the first on the Longhu list, he still cared about his pride. Don't be fooled by the fact that he was always laughing and joking all day long, as if he didn't care about anything, but he still had a competitive heart. In the past, he did not work hard and left everything to fate. But this time, Feng Qi Xiao was really ready to take it seriously. As Chu Xiu returned to Northern Yen, the news of Wind Sweeping Building also spread throughout the underworld. The fact that 3 Longhu list prodigies stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm did not cause too much of a stir. What really caused a stir was the truth of the Yu Nu Palace's sword welcoming assembly. It was not a good thing to talk about. In any case, the Yu Nu Palace's reputation plummeted in a day. This matter even caused many people to discuss whether the immediate benefits were more important or the sect's future development. Although most people were denouncing the Yu Nu Palace's short-sightedness, in fact, most people knew that if they were in their shoes, they would most likely make the same choice. If their sect could be as powerful as Sword King City, they naturally would not exchange their own disciples for immediate benefits. For a sect like Sword King City, they could afford to raise a rare genius in the Sword Dao like the 7th young Master Feng. They could also afford to raise a young disciple like Lin Kaiyun, whose talent could only be considered decent. But for some ordinary forces, they could afford to raise such geniuses, but there was no guarantee that they would become supreme powerhouses who could stir up the underworld in the future. On the contrary, if they were sacrificed to the 9-tailed fox, they could obtain the 9-tailed fox's protection for 100 years. As long as they successfully devoured the martial artist's mental qi, the 9-tailed fox's remnant soul at its peak could even exert power stronger than a true fire spirit refinement powerhouse. Everyone wanted to have a long-term vision, but unfortunately, the price of having a long-term vision was how they should get through the crisis in front of them. Of course, these things were not what Chu Xiu would consider. He had already laid out the trap. Only God knew how long the Yu Nu Palace could last. However, just as Chu Xiu returned to Martial Suppression Hall in Northern Yen, Mei Qinglian came to find him. She heaved a long sigh and said, "You're finally back. That old guy Xiang Long has sent people to urge you several times recently. I'm afraid the Imperial Court won't allow you to delay." Chapter 777. Before Chu Xiu went to Eastern Qi, Xiang Long had looked for him and asked him to go to the Great Light Temple to garrison. However, Chu Xiu had rejected the request and did not take it seriously. Xiang Long wanted to provoke the Great Light Temple at this time, but Chu Xiu did not want to be the knife in his hand. Originally, Chu Xiu had thought that by going to Eastern Qi and purposely evading the matter, he would be able to get away with it. He did not expect Xiang Long to still insist on going to the Temple of Great Light to station troops there. There was no value in the bitter cold of the far north. Apart from angering the Great Light Temple, there was basically no benefit to the Northern Yen court. At this time, there was movement outside the Zhenwu Hall. A eunuch from the palace walked in. When he saw Chu Xiu, his eyes suddenly lit up and he quickly said, "Official Chu, His Majesty has been waiting for you for a long time. Now that you have finally returned from Eastern Qi, His Majesty invites you to the palace for a discussion. Chu Xiu shook his head gently. This time, he might not be able to avoid it. Therefore, he asked Mei Qinglian to help make arrangements for Lu Fengxian while he followed the eunuch to the palace. In the main hall of the Northern Yan Palace, Chu Xiu saw Xiang Long again. Compared to the last time, Xiang Long's face showed obvious signs of aging. Even his aura was weaker. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. He could roughly guess why Xiang Long was so persistent. It was not that Xiang Long was old and muddle-headed, but this mighty ruler of Northern Yan did not have much longer to live. This Northern Yan ruler had spent half of his life in the military, and used half of his power to develop the Northern Yan. He had used all kinds of tricks and schemes to surpass Eastern Qi. Finally, he had developed the Northern Yan into a country that was comparable to Eastern Qi. However, with the foundation and potential of the Northern Yan, there were too many things for Xiang Long to handle, and it was too much for him to handle. Take the Emperor of Eastern Qi, Lu Haochong, for example. He was a famous mediocre emperor who did not want to think about anything else other than stability. That was why he had the time to cultivate his body and mind, almost causing his son to die of exhaustion. Even if Xiang Long had the false reputation of being a heavenly treasure, he would only be drinking poison to quench his thirst. The effect would not be too great. Before he died, he wanted to leave behind a stable and complete Northern Yan for his descendants. This was perhaps Xiang Long's last wish. At this time when he saw Chu Xiu coming, Xiang Long snorted and said, "Chu Xiu, you are the governor of my Northern Yan's Zhenwu Hall. I have given you such an important position, but you run away all day. What is this?" Chu Xiu said faintly, "Your Majesty, you have wronged me. I am alone outside, but I have not delayed the matters of Zhenwu Hall. In the beginning, I made an agreement with Your Majesty that Zhenwu Hall could help to suppress the Northern Yan martial arts. Now, the Northern Yan martial arts is very stable and peaceful. What difference does it make whether I am there or not?" Xiang Long snorted coldly and said, "I am too lazy to argue with you about these trivial matters. I have told you before that the Northern Yan will station troops in the bitter and cold land of the extreme north. Your Zhenwu Hall will be responsible for spearheading the attack. Do you know about this?" Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Your Majesty, you have seen the strength of the great Guangming Temple. Stationing troops in the bitter and cold land of the extreme north is tantamount to provoking the great Guangming Temple. The consequences are hard to imagine." Xiang Long was silent for a while and suddenly said, "Chu Xiu, do you think that I have lost my mind? Do I have to stir up trouble at this critical moment and provoke those monks?" Chu Xiu did not speak, but obviously, this was what he meant. Xiang Long suddenly laughed, and then his face instantly turned gloomy. He said coldly, "I am the Emperor of the Northern Yan. The thousands of miles of the Northern Yan territory are all mine. But the monks of the great Guangming Temple have no regard for me, nor for the Northern Yan. Before you went to Eastern Qi, an old monk of the Dharma Hall of the great Guangming Temple passed by Donglin County. Because Nan Qianli, the general of the Iron Guards of Donglin County, was a rogue cultivator of diabolism and was practicing diabolism with prisoners on death row in the military camp. He sensed his aura and broke into the military camp alone. He killed Nan Qianli and hundreds of Northern Yan soldiers before finally leaving. In the eyes of those monks, they only care about their own right and wrong. When have I ever existed in their eyes? Is it possible that one day when someone in my palace practices demonic arts, they will also kill their way into my palace?" After listening to Xiang Long's words, Chu Xiu's eyebrows suddenly twitched. At this time, he did not know how to describe the monks of the great Guangming Temple. Is there really something wrong with these bald donkeys? Other places are not enough for you to show off your strength. How dare you break into the Northern Yan military camp alone to kill people? To be honest, if this kind of thing happened to Chu Xiu, he would not be able to tolerate it either. If the monks of the great Guangming Temple had the intention, the imperial court could still negotiate with them to find out what the conflict was between the two sides. But the problem was that the old monk of the great Guangming Temple did it unintentionally. He only felt that someone was practicing diabolism with human lives. Well, it did not matter if the other party was the general of the Northern Yan, and it did not matter if the other party practiced diabolism with prisoners on death row. In any case, he would be killed. From this point, It could be seen that the monks of the Great Guangming Temple had never taken the Northern Yan imperial court seriously. It was no wonder that Xianglong was so angry. However, Xianglong's anger was his business. Chu Xiu did not intend to help Xianglong die. Therefore, Chu Xiu said directly, "Your Majesty, the Zhenwu Hall can help you with other matters. But this matter is no different from courting death. The abbot of the Great Guangming Temple has already stepped into the metaphysical realm of heaven and earth. If you anger him, who will stop him?" Xianglong snorted and said, "If this matter was so simple, why would I look for you? You decide the scale of this matter yourself. I only want the result, not the process." Chu Xiu still wanted to say something, but at this moment, Lu Jiang he suddenly said, "Kid, agree to it." In the past, the Blood Demon Hall buried their treasures in the cold land of the extreme north, not far from the Great Guangming Temple. Chu Xiu said doubtfully, "Are you joking? You are a member of the Kunlun Devil cult, but you place the treasures in the vicinity of the Great Guangming Temple?" Lu Jiang he laughed coldly and said, "So what? With the power of the sacred cult in the past, as long as the items are not placed in the latrine of the abbot of the Great Guangming Temple, they can be placed anywhere. In the past, when the Patriarch Dugu was still around, the Great Guangming Temple was so scared that they did not even dare to step out of their mountain gates. Only by placing the treasures there will it be safe enough." Lu Jiang he would not lie to him about this matter, so when he heard Lu Jiang he say this, Chu Xiu could only put on an expression as if he had no choice but to submit. He said in a low voice, "As you wish, Your Majesty." If there were no orders from the imperial court, Chu Xiu would probably be suspected by the people of the Great Guangming Temple if he rashly went near the Great Guangming Temple. With the imperial court's orders, Chu Xiu had an additional excuse. Of course, on the surface, he still had to put on an expression of helplessness that he had only agreed to it. After Chu Xiu left, an old eunuch appeared behind Xianglong. It was Xianglong's personal eunuch, Eunuch Han. He said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, this official Chu seems to be very unwilling. If you force him like this, will there be any accidents?" Xianglong snorted coldly, "This gang of Jianghu people are so wild and hard to tame." "Unwilling? With me, there is no such thing as willing or unwilling, only what can be done and what cannot be done." At this point, Xianglong's voice suddenly became softer. He sighed and said, "I don't have much time left." The Northern Yan is inherently weak and cannot compete with the Eastern Qi, which is located in the Central Plains. In this generation, even with my painstaking efforts, coupled with the fact that Eastern Qi's Lu Haochong is basically an incompetent person, we can only temporarily suppress the Eastern Qi. However, the strength of both sides is still there. As long as Eastern Qi produces a slightly passable emperor, the Northern Yan will be in danger. At this time, I can't do anything about the external problems, but as for the internal problems, I want to completely solve them while I am still alive. Eunuch Han shook his head silently. "Your Majesty is too anxious. Although the power of the Northern Yan Jianghu is not as strong as Eastern Qi, it is not that easy to deal with. Especially when His Majesty wants to kill with a borrowed knife. This is actually a risky move. Chu Xiu is not an obedient knife. People from the diabolism are the most dangerous. Previously, when His Majesty promised Taoist Wu Wang of the Shade Mountain faction to become the national religion, Eunuch Han was against it. The people from the Shade Mountain faction are also from the diabolism. They are ruthless and not good people. But now, His Majesty actually lured this Chu Xiu here. This person has been notorious in the Jianghu for a long time and is also not a good person. Of course, Eunuch Han will not say these things because there is no need. He is just a servant, not a member of the Northern Yan royal family. What should be said can be said, and what should not be said, there is no need for him to say it. Moreover, for a hero like Xianglong, it is certain that he is headstrong and will not listen to the advice of others. At this moment, after Chu Xiu walked out of the palace, his face was gloomy. Does Xianglong really think of me as his official? He actually dares to force me like this. The Zhenwu Hall and the Northern Yan Imperial Court are actually just partners. Lu Jiang he chuckled in Chu Xiu's ear and said, "Don't be surprised, the Imperial Court is like this. In the past, when the Kunlun Devil cult was still around, whether it is Eastern Qi or Northern Yan, they did not dare to interfere in any Jianghu matters. Now, this old Northern Yan emperor has the guts to dare to have designs on the Temple of Great Light." Chu Xiu ignored Lu Jiang he. At this moment, Taoist Wu Wang came out from the other side of the palace. Seeing Chu Xiao, Taoist Wu Wang revealed a smile and said, "It seems that official Chu has been entrusted with an important task by His Majesty. Congratulations." Although Taoist Wu Yang was congratulating him, his expression was one of schadenfreude. Going head-on against the Temple of Great Light is not a good task. Aren't you, Chu Xiao, very capable? Aren't you high profile? Now, this kind of good thing naturally fell on your head, and not on my head. Chu Xiao did not say anything. He just stared at Taoist Wu Wang until he saw Taoist Wu Wang's hair stand on end. Only then did he say, "You think this is a good thing? You are gloating at my misfortune, but you are the one laughing at yourself." Taoist Wu Wang frowned and said, "What do you mean?" Chu Xiao looked around and said, "Let's find a quiet place to talk." Chapter 778. Taoist Wu Yang was inexplicably brought to a restaurant by Chu Xiao. Facing Chu Xiao alone, Taoist Wu Yang was rather nervous. Actually, this time, Taoist Wu Yang had come to mock Chu Xiao. Previously in the Suppression Martial Hall, Taoist Wu Yang had been suppressed by Chu Xiao to the extreme. In name, he was the general director of the Suppression Martial Hall, but in reality, he could not interfere with the authority of the Suppression Martial Hall at all. In the Jianghu, whenever the Suppression Martial Hall was mentioned, the first person that came to mind was Chu Xiao, and not Taoist Wu Yang, who had an extremely low presence. Taoist Wu Yang also knew why Xiang Long had sought out Chu Xiao this time, so he was very happy in his heart. "You, Chu Xiao, are high-profile and arrogant. You used to be very awe-inspiring, but look at you now. You've become the bird that sticks out, haven't you?" But who would have thought that Chu Xiao would not be angry, and instead bring him here? Taoist Wu Yang was also a little uneasy. This Chu Xiao could not possibly want to kill him. Could he? Previously, there were many eyes in the palace, but now it was quiet here. This was the best time to strike. But just because he had mocked Chu Xiao, he wanted to kill him. This Chu Xiao should not be that crazy, right? But according to Chu Xiao's usual style of doing things, he seemed to be such a crazy person. Taoist Wu Yang's imagination was running wild when Chu Xiao suddenly said, "Taoist Wu Yang, do you think that His Majesty sending me to fight the Temple of Great Light is a very funny thing?" Taoist Wu Yang was startled by Chu Xiao's sudden words. His body trembled violently, and he almost fled. But sensing that Chu Xiao did not have any killing intent, Taoist Wu Yang laughed awkwardly and said, "It's not funny. Official Chu, please do not mind my words just now." Chu Xiao glanced at Taoist Wu Yang curiously, not knowing why he had such a huge reaction. He did not know that his ferocity had reached such a level. Without even saying a word, Taoist Wu Yang's imagination had already made him seem like he was about to kill someone. Chu Xiao said lightly, "Taoist Priest 5 Disasters, I know that you have a problem with me. However, you should know very well where this problem comes from. My promise to Xiang Long to establish the Zhenwu Hall was just a deal. Your cooperation with the Northern Yan Imperial Court is also a deal. Xiang Long can set up another department for you and me at the same time when he establishes the Suppression Martial Hall. Not only will there be no conflict, but both of us can cooperate sincerely. We can also maximize our strength, right?" Taoist Wu Yang did not speak. He was not an idiot. He naturally knew about these things. However, knowing was one thing, but it did not mean that he could let it go. He naturally did not dare to resent Xiang Long, so he could only challenge Chu Xiao. Of course, he could only use some small tricks in the dark. He did not have the guts to directly clash with Chu Xiao. Looking at Taoist Wu Yang, Chu Xiao knocked on the table and said word by word, "Taoist Wu Yang, no matter what enmity your Shadow Mountain sect had with the Kunlun Devil cult in the past, you must remember that you and I are people of the pugilistic world, not people of the Imperial Court. The pugilistic world and the Imperial Court are always opposing existences. Xiang Long may have used us, but he has never trusted us." Chu Xiao's words caused Taoist Wu Yang's heart to tremble violently. Chu Xiao was speaking the truth. He could also see that Xiang Long had never trusted him. Although he had been by Xiang Long's side longer than Chu Xiao, to Xiang Long, the two were the same. Xiang Long did not trust Chu Xiao, and similarly did not trust Taoist Wu Yang. After a moment of silence, Taoist Wu Yang said, "Official Chu, so what do you mean now? Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, Taoist Wuyang, without the lips the teeth will be cold. Today, Xiang Long was able to force me to go against the Temple of Great Light. This is enough to show Xiang Long's attitude towards us people of the pugilistic world. We are nothing more than his lackeys. Once the cunning hare is dead, the lackey will be cooked. Xiang Long still has a use for us now, and he will do this, let alone in the future when he has no use for us. Today, I am the unlucky one. Bringing Taoist Wuyang with me. Do you dare say that you will never have a turn? Taoist Wuyang's expression was somewhat uncertain. In truth, when he first heard the news, Taoist Wuyang's first reaction was indeed to gloat at Chu Xiu's misfortune. But after Chu Xiu explained everything clearly, Taoist Wuyang was no longer in the mood to gloat over his misfortune. Emperors were fickle, and a mighty ruler like Xiang Long was even colder by nature. Chu Xiu had been the viceroy of the subduing martial hall for a long time, and he had helped Xiang Long settle many things. It could be said that Xiang Long had profited greatly from the deal with Chu Xiu. But now, he still had to fall out with him. After a moment of silence, Taoist Wuyang asked, Then official Chu, what do you mean? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, What do I mean? Haha, some things are not good to say too clearly. But I believe that you, Taoist Wuyang, should be able to see one thing. Xiang Long probably won't be able to live for long. Since Xiang Long wants to see us opposing each other, then you and I will put on a show for Xiang Long. As for the future, we can talk about it later. But I'm afraid that the Northern Yan court will not be peaceful for long. I believe that when the time comes, Taoist Wuyang, you should know which side you should stand on. After saying this, Chu Xiu patted Taoist Wuyang's shoulder and turned to leave. In the restaurant, Taoist Wuyang's expression was somewhat uncertain. He was also a little uncertain about what Chu Xiu was planning. But it was clear that Xiang Long had angered Chu Xiu this time. From his tone, he was preparing for a big one. For Chu Xiu to dare call Xiang Long by his name in front of him, it was obvious that he had no respect for Xiang Long at all. Taoist Wuyang's Shadow Mountain sect was a branch of Taoism after all. He still had some qi divination skills. He saw Xiang Long a few days ago. At this moment, Xiang Long was indeed haunted by death. Even with those precious treasures, his own aging could not be made up for. When the day of Xiang Long's death came, the Northern Yan court would be in chaos. Which side would he stand on? This was a question that was worth pondering. Of course, for now, Taoist Wuyang was very much in agreement with what Chu Xiu said. Right now, they were on the same side. They could put on a show on the surface, but they could not really kill each other on the inside. After returning to the Zhenwu Hall, Mei Qinglian wanted to ask Chu Xiu what Xiang Long had said to him. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, Gather everyone. Let's go to the meeting hall to discuss. After a quarter of an hour, all of Chu Xiu's trusted elites had gathered in the Zhenwu Hall. Mei Qinglian and Pang who were there. Tang Ya and the other old men under Chu Xiu, as well as Zhao Chengping and the others from the Yinma clan were also there. Moreover, Lu Fengxian had also brought Shui Wuxiang and the other three here. Originally, Mei Qinglian did not call Lu Fengxian. However, Lu Fengxian was in the Zhenwu Hall. He thought that something had happened, so he followed to see if he could help. Everyone knew the relationship between Lu Fengxian and Chu Xiu, so they did not say much. Looking at the crowd, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, Just now, Xiang Long asked me to go over and force the Zhenwu Hall to take action to deal with the Great Light Temple. He wanted to test their bottom line. Mei Qinglian frowned and said, What is Xiang Long thinking? Provoking the Great Light Temple at this time? Is he courting death? Chu Xiu sneered and said, Of course, Xiang Long knows that this is courting death. Therefore, he did not send the Northern Yan's national 5 armies, but sent the Zhenwu Hall. Why? It's just to drive the tiger to swallow the wolf. The national 5 armies are Northern Yan's own people, while we are outsiders. Most importantly, we belong to the Yinma clan. Once something happens to me, will the Yinma clan let it go? At that time, the Northern Yan Imperial Court does not need to do anything. The Yinma clan itself will fight with the Great Light Temple. Even if both sides are not destroyed, their vitality will be greatly damaged. Anyway, no matter how you look at it, the Northern Yan Imperial Court will benefit. Pang Hu rubbed his head and sneered. Like I said, that old thing Xiang Long is not a person who is easy to get along with. Cooperating with him is like asking a tiger for its skin. Chu Xiao, why don't you just bring the Zhenwu Hall and rebel against the Northern Yan? The Qilian stockade will still follow you. In this Northern Yan land, the power that we can create together will not lose to the 36 northern bandits of the past. Chu Xiao shook his head and said, rebel against the Northern Yan Imperial Court? During this period of time, I have led the Zhenwu Hall to help the Northern Yan Imperial Court suppress so many sects in the pugilistic world. These are all achievements and foundations. If I leave now, won't there be nothing left? Even if I want to leave, I can't just leave like this. Otherwise, won't we suffer a great loss? Mei Qinglian frowned and said, what can we do if we don't leave? Are you really going to go against the Great Light Temple? Chu Xiao said, we'll talk about the Great Light Temple in the future. For now, all of you should be careful and try to maintain your strength. Don't get into conflict with the Imperial Court. The same goes for Taoist Wuyong's people. Also, I would like to meet with Senior Wei to discuss some matters. Mei Qinglian asked, what is it? Chu Xiao squinted and said, I want to ask old Senior Wei if he has any plans to let the Yinma clan settle down in the Northern Yan. After drifting for so long, the Yinma clan should have a stable base. They don't have to hide underground. Hearing Chu Xiao say this, Mei Qinglian was shocked. What was Chu Xiao planning to do? Was he going to rebel? The Yinma clan had a special identity. Even if the Yinma clan surrendered to him, Xianglong would not dare to accept them. Otherwise, wouldn't the Northern Yan become a den of demons? As for Chu Xiao, he was a special case. Chu Xiao had always appeared in front of the pugilistic world. It was not until recently that he revealed his identity as a member of the Yinma clan. Moreover, he had fought against the attacks of the Northern Yan and Eastern Qi alliances. He had the right to appear in the pugilistic world openly. Therefore, it was not a problem for Xianglong to cooperate with Chu Xiao. Although Mei Qinglian knew that Chu Xiao had always been bold, this time, he had actually set his sights on the Northern Yan Imperial Court. This could not be called bold, it was simply crazy. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.